So we're starting the recording.
Figure it out and let us know. But yeah, I want to address that. If you'd like a tree, yeah. I think that's fine, yeah. Yeah, nope. Okay, no problem.
Right, and I think that's,
And then so they gave me that one.
well, we're gonna have a presentation.
I don't need to talk.
And then we're gonna have public input, and so that's, there's a bunch of steps there. We can always. No, it doesn't always.
I think we definitely need to enforce this. See if we can come up with a better plan. Do a survey.
Oh, action,
How many vehicles?
action is applicable, so yes, we can make a decision, but we can also not make a decision. Okay, Sean?
Sean Dabbling.
Dabbling?
Our judge. One that's gonna do it. So just make sure that when you announce that, people know that he's a municipal judge.
You're fine. I don't need nothing. I'm alarmed. Yeah, can't we do a combination of all of these?
I mean, I think that there could be a resolution to combine. That's what I was.
I think in a short meeting like this, we don't have time. I think there's a lot more discussion to it, and I think we need more data, a lot more data on it. See how many people we'd have to tow over a winter.
Oh, for sure, thank you.
He's outside. He's right there. He's there.
Tommy, you getting busy?
Hiding behind the desk.
All the riffraff's in here. It just goes crazy. Yeah. Somebody will call me. Oh, I think this. Okay, I'll keep you a call. 4 weeks out. You told me to start. Sure.
Recording in progress.
Okay, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is May 16th, 2023 at 6:30 PM. Roll call, please.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Here.
Trustee Harts?
Here.
Trustee Thomas?
Here.
Trustee Wolf?
Here.
Trustee Ah?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Here. And if everybody would rise for the pledge. Okay. Does anybody have any conflict of interest tonight? Chamber, Lori. The chamber.
Yes. Oh, good grief.
So I'm going to recuse myself from 5C and 5A for the block party license as I'm part of the chamber.
I will also be abstaining from 5C. And
8A.
Oh, and 8A. Sorry.
That's okay. All right. Do we have any general public input? Please limit it to 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we can move on to the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
Second.
Trustee Cesaro,
Yes.
Trustee Harts,
Yes.
Trustee Thomas,
Yes.
Trustee Wolf,
Yes.
Trustee Ah,
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland.
Yes. Okay, we are moving on to our new marshal and sergeant oaths. We want to go ahead and have Michael Hoke come up. And presenting this oath is going to be Sean Davelin, our municipal judge.
Michael, I'd like to raise your right hand and repeat after me, sir. I, Michael Hoge, swear I will support the Constitution of the United States,
Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
and I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
to the state of Colorado,
to the state of Colorado,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution of the laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of Bayfield Marshal
execute the office of Bayfield Marshal, or Bayfield Marshal,
according to the Constitution,
according to the Constitution,
laws of the state,
laws of the state,
and town of Livingston.
and town of Livingston.
I'm not gonna sign this now. Ms. Sickles, do you want us to sign this now, or? All right, you sign first. Today is the 16th. Cardinals are tied. Oh, no, they're coming back.
Before we promote Dustin, I'd like to give a little brief overview of him and his career. Dustin graduated the Southwest Regional Law Enforcement in Durango in 2011. Dustin had the extreme honor of being the Academy's class president at that time. Dustin started off his law enforcement career with the La Plata County Sheriff's Office as a jailer or a corrections officer, and then moved to the streets in 2011. Or 2008. In 2018, Dustin started working at the Bayfield Marshal's Office. His dedication and work ethic has presented himself to supervisors as an officer to build as a future leader of the Bayfield Marshal's Office. Not only does Dustin give 100% while on duty, he's married to his wife Amber, and they are parenting their 5 children. It is my pleasure to introduce Dustin as the Bayfield Marshal's newest sergeant.
And the judge will give the oath.
Oh, so- Like, where are you going, Dustin?
Mr. Stritzel, please raise your right hand and follow me. I, Dustin Stritzel, swear I will support the Constitution of the United States,
Swear I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
to the state of Colorado,
to the state of Colorado,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully, without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of Bayfield Sergeant
execute the office of Bayfield Sergeant
according to the Constitution,
according to the Constitution,
laws of the state,
laws of the state,
and town of Livingston.
town ordinances.
It's the 16th.
All righty, so next we are going to do the presentation for the community grant request from the Women's Resource Center for $1,500.
So I believe we have, thank you.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. I think I have to lower this every time I try to speak.
If you'll state your
Can-
name for us and address as well.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. My name is Tammy Tyner. I'm the Executive Director of Women's Resource Center in Durango. Do you want my personal address?
Yes.
Okay. It's 237 Carlisle Drive in Durango.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just moved, so I had to think about it. So first off, thank you for making some space on the agenda for me this evening. Women's Resource Center advocates for the personal empowerment and economic self-sufficiency of women and girls in La Plata County. So we serve all of La Plata County. And the way our mission serves girls is that we empower them. And one of the ways that we empower them is with our Get Your Girl Power program, which many of you may be familiar with, because Town of Bayfield has been a supporter of that program here in Bayfield for 10 years. Anyway, we wanted to, everybody in the office and all of our volunteers and the kids wanted to thank all of you for supporting that program and all that it gives to them as they transition into middle school. We've been privileged to work with all of you, like I said, for about 10 years. We have typically requested and you have funded $1,000 each year. And this year, we're asking for $1,500. We're providing the girls with a few more materials in the program, and then we have also experienced a reduced funding this year in several areas in our organization. So we're hoping that we might be able to team with you with $1,500. We'll be serving 50 girls at Bayfield Intermediate School, and that comes to $30 per kid, and what we do is really powerful. What we offer is a full day of workshops for those girls, and they get to meet with their peers and professionals within the community. All of the workshops that we have during that day do line up with the Colorado State standards, so that's right in line with the requirements of the school. And then the 3 tracks that the workshops the girls visit, we do it at the school. The 3 tracks, overall tracks that we try to cover are advocacy for oneself and others, healthy relationships, and of course for girls that age, that's healthy friendships, healthy family relationships, and then positive self-image. The objectives of Get Your Girl Power are to show the girls the importance of eating healthy and living a healthy lifestyle, how to identify bullying behaviors, intervene on behalf of others, embrace diversity, and accept family, friends, and other community members. Also to discuss and role play the keys to good communication and healthy relationships with an emphasis on the impact of cyberbullying. So cyber awareness is really key. We reiterate the importance of staying in school and how with an education, any dream is possible. We make sure that the girls know that every girl can grow up to become a self-confident, self-sufficient leader in her community. And we help the girls understand that leaders are real people who believe in themselves and can do anything they set their minds to accomplish. So the way this program lines up with the town of Bayfield and their mission is we really work on the girls becoming culturally aware, embracing diversity, developing independence, staying in school, and then becoming self-confident, self-sufficient leaders within the community. And again, we're requesting $1,500 this year. That'll be about $30 per student. We are teaming with MANA. They will be providing a workshop where they talk about the importance of nutrition and healthy living. The girls also, MANA brings a whole bunch of different nuts and fruits and things like that that the girls get to make a trail mix that they get to carry around, that healthy snack for the day. We're also working with SASO, Sexual Assault Services Organization. Their workshop is going to be on resilience, cyber safety, and conflict resolution. And we're working with the Hive. They have another conflict resolution and identity and self-expression workshop. And finally, the fourth facilitator is Pine River Library, and they are going to provide a workshop on perseverance and relationships. So during the entire program, so after each workshop and then at the end of the day, we have girls fill out questionnaires about what they learned, what they liked, and I wanted to share a little bit of that with you from last year because I think they speak louder than any of us can. So in our questionnaires, every child that filled out the questionnaire said that they had a lot of fun. 100% identified consistent as being as being freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. 97% correctly identified safe attributes of a healthy relationship. 97% practiced and understood anti-bullying techniques. 94% learned something about themselves that enhanced their safety, relationships, and self-confidence. 91% identified successful ways to stay motivated and achieve goals. 86% were able to identify a role model in their lives that they could follow. 96% recognized the importance of staying in school. 93% learned how to eat healthier. 86% learned how to stick with something even when it gets hard. 93% learned ways to feel better when they feel sad. 93% learned how to feel safer online. 93% learned how to respond to conflicts with other people. 95% learned to embrace diversity. 86% felt more empowered to solve problems. And then at the end of the day, we just had them write some comments about the fun that they had, so I want to share a few of those real quick. If you're feeling unsure about someone or something, say something to a safe adult. Appreciate your friends. This was fun and educational. Be yourself. Eat healthy, have confidence, be nice, get rest, take care of yourself. Thanks for the food and this fun day. I have more friends now. Be safe. Have fun. This was so much fun, and thank you. So I just wanted to come and present to you all again and ask that maybe we can team up once again and provide this critical programming for these girls as they transition into middle school. Okay?
you.
Any questions?
I have a question, Tammy. How
Yeah.
many girls participate year over year typically? Is it around 50?
It's around, you guys have around 50
Okay.
fifth grade girls, and it fluctuates, but it's generally right around 50. And this year, I think we have right at 50 girls in fifth grade. Anything else?
So I appreciate that you're doing it this time of the year. In the past, we've done it during budget season, which it becomes very difficult with everything going on. I think it's really helpful for you to do a personal presentation at this point. The board did adopt a resolution. They kind of gave certain grant limits, and you were aware of that. The first two 1,500 grants were given out at your last meeting. You do have other grants. You could decide to couple two together, maybe a $500 and a $1,000 together. And then there would be a point where you would grant everything out at some point. So it's just, by the time I got the application, I didn't know you were going to award the other two. So now it'll be clearer when I'm sending that application out.
Katie, so we've only given out the 215 so far this year?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you for giving me this time. I appreciate it. And thanks for teaming up with us all these years.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any discussion? Well, I'll just say that, I mean, year over year, you've come and, I appreciate what the Women's Resource Center does. In my line of business, I deal with women a lot of time in finances, and I can't even tell you the amount of women I've sent to the Women's Resource Center for help when we couldn't help. So truly appreciate what you do for our community and for the young ladies in our community. Does anybody want to make a motion and vote on this tonight? Thoughts combined?
I think we've got,
Do 1,000?
What do we have left budgeted for those?
So currently you have 3 $1,000 grants, 4 $500 grants, and 4 $250 grants is what you have currently left.
We have a total of 10, and we've only used 3,000.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to, Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to approve the requested amount.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? I would maybe suggest we use one of the $500 to compensate, so we don't go over our budget.
100%, I agree.
Maybe a adjustment to the motion
Oh,
to
for
include,
500?
no, to include that it's 2 grants, one for 1,000,
it.
one for 500.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to make a motion to approve the amount requested with 2 grants, one for $1,000 and one for $500.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Yes.
Trustee Harts?
Yes?
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Yes. All in favor? Okay, next we are moving on to Joe Stevenson Park Master Plan Revision.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ryan Orndorff. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for Bayfield, and I'm here to give the board an update on the process that we've been working on for updating our conceptual park design for Bayfield Parks. You can go ahead to the first slide there, the next slide. So a lot of you are familiar with, you've heard this story. I came on in July. In November of 2022, we began working with Groundwork Studios to do an update on our conceptual park design for Bayfield Parks. Originally, the park design was done in 2018 with Groundwork Studios, and it included, the whole design hinged upon the rodeo grounds moving. We've since found out that won't be happening anytime soon, so it kind of gave us some direction as far as moving forward. So we wanted to redo the design and with the rodeo grounds staying in place. And so the area that we're talking about looking at includes Eagle Park, Joe Stevenson Park, the Pine River Senior Center, a 23.8 acre riverbank parcel between the senior center and the wastewater treatment plant, and then the area south of the wastewater treatment facility. We worked with Groundworks to come up with 2 options to present to the public, options A and B. Honestly, they're not that much different, but they, the idea was to just get people thinking and, just get them to, give feedback not only on what we were presenting, but also ideas of their own, what they would like to see in the future for the parks. Public input was gathered mainly through an online survey that was put up on the town's website. We also did some in-person feedback and survey collection at the Pine River Library. They were nice enough to let us set up a display there and collect surveys. The Spring Festival event, and then we did a public open house a few weeks ago here at Town Hall. We had a great response. We received 369 survey submissions from the community, which was really great. I was hoping for like 30, but they just started coming and coming. And so, yeah, I think it really shows how much the community cares about Parks and Recreation, and also it's, you know, it's fun to dream big when it comes to parks. So I've presented this same presentation to the Planning Commission last week, and tonight present to you all. And, you know, we're just looking for any feedback. You know, we'll talk about the survey results, and then also kind of what staff has kind of gleaned from those results. And then, you know, you'll have the opportunity to direct us moving forward. Taking that all into account, we'll start working. We actually have a meeting already scheduled for Monday to start working on the final design to come back for final approval. And Groundworks will help come up not only with the final design, but also phasing and estimates for the different projects. And then, you know, the plan would be to budget appropriately to pursue grant funding for phase 1 next year in 2024. So we have options A and B here in person. I know they're not visible for everybody. I think they were put in your packet as well for you to reference, and then here they are. And really the main differences between option A and B, so kind of starting up north, the biggest thing with option A is that there's access off of Bayfield Parkway leading into the park. Option B does not have that feature. And that's a really important piece because it determines layout. It determines kind of the direction of where we would go from there. So that's a major thing. A lot of the other amenities are really kind of the same. It's just positioning as far as A and B goes. But that's the big one is the direct access off of Bayfield Parkway. Moving south to the 23-acre parcel, that area really, is kind of the same for both with the wetlands and everything in that area, protected wildlife. There's not a whole lot that we can, come up with other than multi-use trails, boardwalk trails, interpretive signage, wildlife viewing, things like that. But luckily for us, that's a big need in the community, as you'll see to come, is multi-use trails and connectivity. And then south of the wastewater treatment plant, again, pretty similar, with the exception of we added a pump track on the far south end of that area. There's also dog parks and a multi-use field in that area. So we'll just go ahead and the next slide, this is the survey that we presented to everybody that we had online and collected in person. And what we asked was for each area, we split it up by area of parks, that, here are the amenities that we're looking at, rate them from 1 to 5, with 5 being the most important. And then they also had an opportunity to write in their own comments for each area, and then also overall additional comments at the end. So the first area looking at, Eagle Park, we had asked about river access, we asked about improved playground and accessibility, and then we also had a sand volleyball court in there. Eagle Park it's a very highly used park in Bayfield. If you live here, you're definitely aware of that. It's very popular kind of as is. So, river access scored pretty high. And then, improved playground and accessibility also scored high. Sand volleyball kind of ran in the middle. And so, as you'll see with the additional comments on the next slide, so I didn't record every single comment that was written down, but just the ones that got multiples. And a lot of people stressed that, better ADA accessibility and improved playground, river access, more walking paths, more parking. It was interesting to see, people say it's great just the way it is. Just leave it as it is. Some people said, please don't ruin the big grass area at Eagle Park. So, and that's all valuable feedback for us as we move on to the final design. Moving on, so Joe Stevenson Park and the Senior Center, that's kind of our biggest area with the most amenities. And you'll start to see a theme through here that, river access, multi-use trails, improved playground facilities, those were all kind of holdovers from back in 2018. They were the most popular things back then, and they're still popular now. We did, some of the things that scored high that were added in on this round was a gathering space. So think of like a gazebo or a shade structure at Joe Stevenson, picnic tables, barbecues, things like that. People were highly supportive of. A splash pad was also one of the new features that scored relatively high. Stage area for hosting entertainment and events. And then a lot of the other ones, when you're talking about specific sports, they were kind of right down the middle, which I think what we learned from that is like, if you're a pickleball player, you love pickleball, you think we should have all the courts. If you love basketball, we should have a lit up basketball court, and, you don't care about pickleball or volleyball or, so I think, as you'll see, one of the things we suggested was just a variety of those sports, is kind of offering as much as we can. In terms of, specific sports. And then, and it was interesting too, I feel like we didn't quite get access off of Bayfield Parkway is really important. And I don't know that we, from the survey, necessarily gleaned exactly, how the public felt about the access. It was kind of split down the middle, but more on that later. So Joe Stevenson Park and Senior Center, the write-in comments, again, better playground, improved playground, better ADA accessibility, improved skate park was pointed out, multi-use trails, again, and so on and so forth. So like I said, you'll start to see a theme here. Moving on to the 23-acre parcel. Like I said, we're somewhat limited in that area of what we can do. It's going to be more of a natural open space with, we're thinking trails, boardwalk trails, that connect, tie everything in together. But again, river access, multi-use trails, community garden and farm, all scored relatively high. And then we also asked about wildlife viewing, agricultural heritage museum. That is something that, in Pine River Shares we've talked to. They have some ideas for that area. We would like to partner with them to offer, some kind of heritage museum, community garden, just a space that, sort of encapsulates all of those things. Write-in comments for this area, again, trails and connectivity. Disc golf was another one that popped up several times throughout. We did look at that originally with the design, but it gets kind of tough because, not only do you have the wetlands, you don't want people traipsing all over those, but you also have all the homes on the left-hand side if you're heading south, and, we don't want to encourage people. I mean, everyone, if you've played disc golf, you sometimes are, going off in other areas looking for disc, and we wouldn't want people doing that on private property. But maybe there's another space for that because that one did come up several times. And then the last area, the wastewater treatment facility, again, river access. And then people overall were pretty supportive of dog parks, small and large breed dog parks. Additional multi-use fields scored relatively high. The pump track did relatively well. So, yeah, and then, as far as the comments for this area, people, I think we really only had maybe one person that was, and they had a good point. It was a local veterinarian, pointed out that dog parks, sometimes, you have dog fights where people get injured, you have poorly socialized dogs, you have, spreading disease, things like that. I do know, running the parks as they are right now, Joe Stevenson Park softball fields are the de facto dog park in Bayfield, and everybody goes there and uses them. And, most people are pretty respectful and they do a good job. We don't have many issues, but sometimes there's waste left behind. You've got, sports and things going on out there. So it does seem like a need, and why not give a more proper space to the community for that. So, kind of in summary, so these are overall additional comments that, we allow people to just like blank canvas, tell us what you would like that, wasn't discussed at all on this but a lot of people just, really reiterated, the river access, the trail connectivity, but they did bring up, some other good points. As you see, a couple people did point out that they thought access from Bayfield Parkway was really key and necessary. One of the other, that I didn't put on here because it doesn't really relate to this particular park design, but we had about 20 people say, I want a rec center or a pool. We had a lot of those. We also had a lot of recurring comments of people saying, we're so excited that you're doing this. Like, we're so excited for something new in Bayfield. We've lived here for generations. I wanted this for my kids. Now I want it for my grandkids. Let's give it to them. So overall, the response was really positive. People are excited. And, obviously this stuff it's fun to talk about now. It'll take time, years to develop and, gather the funding and things like that. But, I think we're on the right track and people are excited. So what did we learn from the public input process? So as I said, clearly the community cares about parks and recreation and they're ready to support new improvements. Nicole and I have talked, she's done some public outreach, public input for some of her projects, and the response paled in comparison, talking like 10 responses compared to the 370 that we got for the parks. I think what we also learned is that it's much preferable to do an online survey. If you have an open house or something in person, it's like people got to take the time, they got to get here, maybe they've got other activities going on, but when you send out an email or a text message with the link, like here's the survey, I set it up right before I went on vacation and couldn't believe that my phone was just blowing up nonstop with all these survey responses, so I immediately turned it off for a week and came back and was shocked to see that many responses had come through. So it definitely has momentum and support. We've confirmed what we learned in 2018, the things that are still popular: river access, multi-use trails and connectivity, improved playgrounds and ADA accessibility, and a gathering space. New for 2023 and also popular were the splash pad, the stage for events and entertainment, and the dog park were some of the highlights. One of the things that I would like to do is maybe, before we decide on a final design, is just explore some other multi-use parks in the area, whether it's Durango, Pagosa, Ignacio, just kind of see, there's a lot of other communities that, have parks that border rivers and things like that and, have multiple uses. So just kind of, seeing what they've done and maybe talking to staff over there about their process and what's working, what they like, what they don't like, if they could do it differently. And then the community really had some valuable input that definitely will be considered and implemented for the final design. Some of those, like I pointed out just a few, but it's like, hey, just make sure you have adequate parking for all these multiple uses. If you're gonna put, a multi-use field and dog parks and a pump track south the wastewater treatment plant, I think there's like 10, I think it says 10 parking spaces. That would not be enough, for on a busy night down there if all those amenities were being used. Providing, people ask, let's provide alternatives to traditional sports. Bayfield's really good about, baseball, soccer, football, baseball, but, my kids don't do any of those things. My kids love to ride bikes, so pump track, improving the skate park, disc golf, some things that are, different from the mainstream. And then, a lot of people pointed out more trees and shade, like don't do anything to Eagle unless you're gonna plant more trees, like, and then like I mentioned earlier, sport-specific amenities, when you say like, do you want a basketball court, all of them kind of were split down the middle. And I think that just, some people are, into those sports and some are not. So I think, providing a variety of different activities will be important. So the last slide is staff recommendations. Kind of we put our heads together and, this is what we're recommending, or taking forward into the final design. Staff recommends direct vehicular access from Bayfield Parkway into Joe Stevenson. It'll improve access for programs, events, the senior center, and it'll lessen the traffic impact on South Street. I mean, as we continue to grow and add amenities, you think about how we all get to, softball or the senior center right now, or the rodeo grounds. I mean, you got to drive all the way around and, come down South Street. So, it just, I think, makes a lot of sense to have that access coming off of Bayfield Parkway into the park. It'll help us, with things like 4th of July, just bringing the vendors in. And, there just seems to be a lot of advantages to that. ADA accessibility should be at the forefront of all of our design. Multiple families reach out to me and just voice there's really not great accessibility for my kids here at the parks, and if we build a park and it's completely ADA accessible, it can be used by everyone. And we can't honestly say that right now. So I think if we do it, we want to always keep that in mind. River access and trail connectivity should be highly prioritized. I think we knew that, and we know that going in. And I think with this final design, we'll probably see if we can tweak or improve some of that as well. And then we had a couple comments like this where, and I agree that improvements to existing parks and facilities are important. We want to, improve what we have, but also add new features. People they're ready to see something new. Bayfield's growing. We've got a lot of young families here in town, a lot of new, houses coming up. Population's going to grow. Let's have something new and exciting in addition to improvements. And then, as I said earlier, provide alternatives to traditional sports, some variety. And then with the expected population growth, multi-use field space, we have to just make sure that we're not adding all these things while also shrinking our field space for programming. And just to add to that, the Planning Commission, they gave us a few recommendations. They kind of gave their blessing to move forward with the final design using the input that we have. The things that they pointed out was that they also agreed with the access from Bayfield Parkway being important. They recommended doing a detailed parking analysis for all of the multiple uses, just to make sure that we're providing adequate parking in the right areas. And then they also recommended, with pickleball being the growing phenomenon that it is, they recommended a dedicated pickleball court as opposed to something that the library has right now, which is kind of like a multi-use type of court. And up until this point, I haven't heard specifically from a lot of pickleball people, but the ones that I have heard from are like, if you build it, they'll come. The people in Durango they're driving all the way to Cortez to play pickleball. Ignacio started up a indoor league at the rec center, and they grew from they started with 5 people, and now they're up to 60. So, I think it may be one of those things that if we build it, they will come out of the woodwork. And I think pickleball has moved out of the fad stage. So that was the Planning Commission's recommendations. And I guess at this time, if the board has any questions or feedback.
I have a question.
Okay.
So when I'm looking at Plan A, there's 30 parking spaces down by the wastewater treatment plant. And when I look at Plan B, those additional spaces seem to have disappeared, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I'm not sure why either.
Yeah, I would recommend adding all of that parking back in.
Yeah, especially because it seems to be flip-flopped. I mean,
Yeah.
we added another feature but took away 20 parking spaces. So,
Yeah.
and luckily, nothing is finalized. I mean, that's definitely something. I mean, parking will be really important. But
No,
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And then is there, so the pump track is in option B. Is there a reason why it couldn't be in option A? I mean, I do have 3 large breed dogs, so I do appreciate having more space, but I also appreciate that that might be a driver for our youth. And is there a reason why that could not be put into option A with the additional parking?
No, I mean, everything is still up for discussion, and, the plan always was to sort of, blend the best parts of A and B together, in addition to taking the feedback from the community. And so, yeah, I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't, switch that up or include it into, like, we really like the access off option A, but we also really like the pump track and
Yeah.
put it all
Right,
together.
that's where I was gonna ask.
Yeah, because
Same
I'm just
thing.
like, why is it different? I get my last question, and it might have to do with the flex stage area. In option A, the basketball court and the pickleball court are arranged in a different manner than they are in the second option. And I don't know if, I mean, do they get shrunk in order to have the stage? Because I actually like the idea of the stage a lot. But I'm kind of curious, how often in Eagle Park, I mean, I know we have the beer festival, which is awesome, and that sand volleyball would totally mess up my vibe of going to that. But I'm wondering, how often do we have events over there where we would have a stage and we have shade, where maybe having a flex stage area might make more sense over there, and maybe where we have the flex stage in this option, move that sand volleyball. I don't know. Now there's more parking over there, and you have pickleball and basketball. You could have sand volleyball over there, and then Eagle Park could be the place where if you had a musical event,
Right.
you have the shade, which is definitely going to be good for not having sunburn, because in the multi-use field, it's pretty wide open. So those are just kind of my thoughts on looking at this, on what might be more.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea,
But
in
how
all
often
honesty.
do we
'cause
have
it's-
that space rented out for live entertainment? Like, that's what I'm
Like
not
events
sure.
like that, not that often. I mean, occasionally we'll have a rental where somebody, wants to set up a band. But, not that often. As far as like actual events over there, besides Pine River Festival, I can't think of any off the top of my head where we do that over at Eagle Park. But you're not the only one. I mean, that was definitely a comment that came up a couple times, was having a stage area at Eagle Park.
Yeah, I just think it makes more sense with the shade, and, I mean, people like to rent out that area for their families, so having a volleyball court in the middle of it, I know if I
Yeah.
wanted to rent it out, I personally wouldn't utilize that. So if maybe all the sporting stuff were together, and then that area is the,
Well, and the other thing
larger
we've talked
space.
about with a stage is having a portable stage,
Yeah.
something, we can move and set up. Because we would use it for
Exactly.
the block parties on Mill Street. We would use it,
Yeah,
at
no,
Joe
that-
Stevenson for
that
4th of
sounds
July.
even better.
I love
Right.
that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
town get a stage. No, that's just when I'm looking at, I love these plans, and I know a lot of work went into them. I especially like the multi-use trail loop. Sorry, other trustees, if you have comments, I'm just I'm really excited about this. And yeah, those would be my suggestions. Maybe we can promote Eagle Park more for live events and have a portable stage, versus now you kind of have the sand volleyball pit in the middle of a green shaded area. That,
Right.
I mean, unless you can cover that up.
Well, and I
with
knew
fence.
going into it, we didn't want to just start putting stuff all in Eagle Park. I mean, that
Yeah.
grass area is used all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
even like on a weekday, it's already warming up. The parks are getting busier. I mean, you walk by there, I mean, you see like, 6, 7, 8 different blankets, people set up throughout the grass. So I think that is a feature. I think the idea with the sand volleyball court is because the pavilion is rented so much. It's like, I don't know. I mean, having a volleyball, family volleyball game, something like that, that option, could work. I would have to go over, I mean, where that's laid out is definitely not where I would put it, but, maybe something close to the pavilion, but there may not be a great space for it over there.
Well, was there a high demand for the basketball court? I mean, I'm hearing pickleball, I'm hearing sand volleyball, but I'm not hearing is basketball.
I think basketball, they were all in that like 2.5, 2.8 average. Basketball, I think, actually scored the highest out of them.
Okay.
I love basketball, but I don't know. I just don't, there are basketball courts at the schools, and I don't see them used all that much outside of school hours. So, you know, I don't know. We would have to think, again, I think it's just going to be important to give a variety rather than just focusing in on, you know, we're going to build, you know, multiple, like a complex of pickleball courts or
Yeah.
basketball, but,
I
But
was
yeah.
thinking if you only had to pick two, maybe you're doing pickleball, sand volleyball, and in option one where you have that flex stage area, maybe that's where you have an additional pavilion.
yeah.
And then, I mean, you're losing one of those courts, but you're gaining maybe a pavilion and more entertainment area and shade over in Eagle Park where there's people who don't want any change.
Right, yeah, and it can get challenging to try to do everything, and before you know it, you're overcrowding. I mean, open space and all of that shade and those areas are equally important as adding new features, so. But
On
yeah,
that, on the bottom part where the multi-use field is that something that's currently being used as a multi-field, or is that?
No.
That would be a new multi-use field?
yeah, it would be a new multi-use
And
field.
do we have growth that would use that multi-use field more? Because I'm thinking, well, maybe put the sand over there, the
Yeah.
volleyball in the sand, it's close to the river, which those kind of things go together.
Yeah, you know, I think with this design, we actually lose a little bit of our field space that we have right now, because, you know,
Does
with,
the track go away?
the track would go
Okay,
away.
didn't see
Yeah, which I know that does get used, but it's
Multi-use
just,
trail now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, we have all this
We
multi-use.
replaced it with something else.
Yeah, it just got moved.
But yeah, we do lose some of that, and we've been seeing our programs grow and grow and grow. Like, I mean, we just finished our adult softball registration, and it capped out. I mean, I've never seen. We have 16 co-ed teams. We would have to add another night if we were going to, you know, have any more teams. So, and like youth spring soccer was up 50 kids. It's just everything is growing and growing. So. You know, having multi-use fields, and like that's the other thing. I mean, I'll talk to the guys at Groundworks, but you know, they have like the one area labeled as like a tot field. I mean, we don't really, you know, have specific permanent fields. We just kind of use the open grass area to lay out the appropriate amount of fields as needed, but we're going to keep needing more and more space.
Right.
My only question is on the Joe Stevenson A, where would you guys put more pavilions? I think we really need them. Trying to get a spotted eagle for a kid's birthday party is dang near impossible.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. People like to go and sit in the shade, and Joe Stevenson's not very shady, obviously. So
Right.
I think we definitely need to look at pavilions. And the basketball courts, I live right by the primary school basketball courts. There's actually quite a bit of activity over there, but it's usually 7, 8 o'clock at night. You'll see the kid, I was like, what is that racket? And there's a whole herd of kids over there playing. So it's good that they're out there doing it. But I think they like that safe little area of the school. Play basketball, it's quieter.
Well, I also know at the primary, the nets are lower, so if it's younger kids from the
Yeah.
community, they may prefer that over, you know. And then, yeah, and you have to think about usage and mixed usage. Like, does it make sense to have a basketball court where you may have like teens or young adults, you know, right next to pickleball, which, you know, pickleball can be played by anybody of all ages, but it definitely, you know, the older population has embraced pickleball. So, you know, thinking about all of those kind of, you know, mixed uses is important too.
I can see that. A lot of adults probably aren't playing the basketball as much.
Yeah.
I definitely think pavilions and more seating and shade would be a big draw.
Yeah, I agree, because you're right. Eagle Park, I mean, we start in April and go through October, and it's rented. We rentals every single weekend. It's a very high use area.
Yep. Take that stage out of there, make it a pavilion, mobile stage, get rid of that volleyball. I'll put them
Yeah.
all in an email.
Right. 10 o'clock Monday, we're having our first planning meeting, so.
Okay.
This is great. I know a lot of work went into it, and so I
Yeah, that's
appreciate
nice.
the reboot on this. I mean, getting that many surveys, we need to figure out how to get that much interest in some of the things that Nicole's looking into, as we heard on Tuesday morning. But no, I think this is great, and I know you have our support in putting something together. But
Yeah, and the survey worked out really well. We found, I mean, we have a new website, and, you know, I just I created a survey and put it up there, and then found out, like, once I started looking at, like, calculating the results, I mean, it calculates everything, it averages it out, it exports it, so it was really handy, made it really easy.
And Ryan, we haven't stated this up here, but I think ADA is on the forefront and a priority
Yep.
for us too, for all of our families. And I know there's some really innovative, play activities for all types of children of different needs, as I saw at the CML conference last year. So I know that I don't see where maybe some of those playground equipment, but I know there's things with sound and more tactile things for smaller children that I'm sure you guys are talking about, but I think that would be a really big plus to those families that have children who would benefit from that more than a volleyball court or another swing set. So
Right.
I know we're talking a lot about adult activities, but I definitely want to make sure we're taking care of our kids and adults who need other types of activities too.
Yep, 100%.
So, thank you, Ryan, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ryan? Okay. Do we have any public input on it today? Just please state your name and address.
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. I think this is probably one of the most important things that the town has looked at in a long time. I think it's a key for our development going forward with the projects that you all have agreed to that are coming up. That could provide anywhere from 500 to 800 new houses just with what you've already approved. That's a lot of people. So having a park like this is critical to the development that's coming, whether you like it or not. So I'm a believer in the park. I think there can be some tweaking of the park personally. I also believe that the park, with the things that you put in there, the dog parks I think are very important. You ideally, with a park like this, can actually bring people off of Highway 160, I think. The access off of Bayfield Parkway is critical. I don't think you should even consider coming all of this traffic off of South Street. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Personal opinion, but the parking is going to be a real problem coming in off South, and then how do they get back to the parking areas? So I also believe that the pump track is a nice idea. I would encourage looking at BMX just because of the amount of time I put in to the Durango Parks and Rec department. That is a draw. And that's a draw. The dog parks are a draw because you can do dog shows with that. The pickleball is a draw because that will bring people in. Every other community is putting in pickleball. I've been involved with the Durango Pickleball Association for the past 6 or 7 years. Again, we started with 8 or 10 people. We have hundreds in our club. Part of these 500 and 800 people that homes that are coming into town, they won't all be kids. We're building creative housing properties now, townhomes, things that active adults and retiring people will be looking at. One, they can't afford Durango, but two, if we have an amenity like this, they will strongly consider Bayfield as a place to live. They can still drive over to Durango for other things, but it helps us not to be a total commuting to Durango environment. We don't want to be that bedroom. We've got to give people reasons to stay here. And if you do amenities like this, I believe development will come. Our big push is not housing anymore. Kyle's well aware of this. If you build what you've already approved, we have about 15 years of housing availability on the horizon. So now you have to look at what supports that and why people will want to stay in Bayfield and not be a bedroom community for Durango. So there's a lot of things in there. You can move the pickleball courts down to the south part onto your multi-purpose field. Plan B calls for the pickleball courts in a different orientation. We don't want that. It's got to be north-south. Also, there's too many trees planted up north. That's where your pavilion can go, where the pickleball courts are. Take those out. The parking's not adequate for it anyway up there. You've got a jam up of parking on that north end. Spread it out. There's going to be dog people. We love being next to the dog parks, but we need north-south orientation. There are no trees down in the South Park. Hopefully you'll all get out and walk this property. We have. It's phenomenal property down there. But there's a huge open area there that could be pickleball courts as well. That's another thing that you're going to find. If you build 2 pickleball courts, they're going to be jammed up immediately. I'm involved with the Ignacio pickleball group now, and we've gone from 6 or 8 players to 50 or 60 in a matter of a couple of months. And most of those people, I would say, live in the Bayfield area. We're putting together a petition that we'll bring to you in the future about how many people would be interested in that. That's another event that can bring people into town, because once you start getting them into this park, then you're going to help Mill Street out big time. It's the only thing that's going to help Mill Street. You got to get people off that highway. And if you have signs out there for a huge dog park available, the people with dogs will pull off the highway. They will. Dog people are dog people, and they're fanatical, just like pickleball people are fanatical. Pickleball is not really a sport. It's more of a cult. So if you build it, they will come. And I got to stress to you and to Ryan that whatever you do with the pickleball that I'm very familiar with, it has to be dedicated courts. A dedicated court is not shared by basketball or anybody else. The concrete construction is different. The nets are different. The access around it is different. The fencing is different. That's what will bring people in. Pagosa is now in the process, just finishing up on 8 new courts over there. We travel to all these different areas, Montrose, Grand Junction, Cortez, Pagosa. We all travel to play at those facilities. We have like a circuit. Well, when we go, we eat and shop in that local community. So these things, dog shows, rodeos, pickleball, whatever it is, they will bring people to town. It's a really important amenity. To me, in the couple of years that I've been active now, this is the #1 thing we ought to be working on. We already got the housing going. Let's support the housing with amenities. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Anybody else that would like to comment? Okay. Well, I know there's some action that was requested, but I don't think we're ready for it.
I'm sorry?
You want to show the pictures?
Yeah, Brian said you need to go walk the site. We do have a real quick, we had a drone flyover, so we can kind of get an idea. So I'll show you that. So we had some drone footage taken of Mill Street. We're doing the sidewalks. No.
No.
There you go. Above the wastewater treatment plant is the area we're looking at for the dog park and pump track. So it's quite a big piece of property.
Thank you. That was easy. Whew. Sounds like there might be a little bit more talk about this, or unless you guys are ready to do this motion that they have.
Well, I don't know that I'm ready just to support the planning commission's, recommendations.
I liked the recommendations that you made. I also liked the more pavilion idea.
I like Brian's recommendation for more, like, 2 dedicated pickleball court. Like, we're picking many different things, maybe we just need to pick one and run with it?
Yeah,
Versus-
I agree. The basketball courts, there's basketball courts by the.
They're everywhere.
By the library too.
Yeah.
And they get used. I know I see people in them in the evening. And I'd rather see at least two pickleball courts. We don't need a whole bank of them, but more than one.
But gosh, you could
Also-
put a pavilion right where that basketball court is too.
Well,
And
yeah.
that's right next to where all the little kids play.
Well, yeah, that's another thing to rent out,
Mhm.
to provide options for parties and events and whatnot.
Yeah,
So we're still in a place that we're not ready to
yeah.
do final.
Yeah, because there's combinations of the parking from the one with the access from the parkway and the other.
So are you looking for another option to consider, maybe going back to groundworks and putting all of, kind of everything in that we've talked about and see that before you make a final decision? I mean, you're gonna
Yeah.
make this isn't your final decision at this point anyway. It's just a matter of giving us direction of where to go to start getting closer to a final.
Well, I definitely think we are agreed that the south portion of B was better. Not the parking, but outside of the parking.
I think
So-
some pickleball courts down there would be nice as well for people who maybe want to play where the kids aren't going to be playing.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I know we want the multi-use field, but if that was where the pickleball was and we had the additional parking spaces, then we have all of that different activity down there, and then up top, maybe that would give us more room for the fields and a pavilion, and it wouldn't have,
Yeah, you can make that top field a little bit larger
yeah.
and a pavilion up there.
So this recommended motion is saying that we're moving forward with all these ideas, not finalizing.
That's correct.
plan.
Yeah. Our goal is basically to get, I mean, I think that I have these listed. I certainly have what Brian Blanchard has provided. And then we look, parking, dog park, stage and shade, and looking at more shade and pavilion and in Joe Stevenson, more seating and shade. Maybe the courts aren't necessarily as important, that north side where the playground is. ADA should be at the forefront, need different needs and ages. And pickleball, I have that listed, so.
And
Definitely
I'm
the
not,
parkway access.
I'm not so sure about the sand volleyball in the middle of Eagle Park
Yeah, I
either.
don't
To
like
be
that
honest
at
with
all,
you, I'm not a
actually.
big fan of that. It takes up all that green space.
Well, and you can put a net up in
Right,
grass.
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've played in grass for years. so,
Exactly. And maybe that, we have a net that people can rent,
Sure.
instead, and they could rent it when they rent the pavilion out for parties.
Okay. So what we're looking for is, if you're not ready, that's fine. If we can at least take another stab at basically the public input, your input, the planning commission, the public here tonight, and then come back with, kind of the, option C, the combination of everything together.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
That would
I
be
think
really
that's
great.
where we're at. Do you need a motion for that?
Do you think you need a motion? You want something firm, or did we hear what we needed to hear?
Yeah, no, I think with all the input we've gotten, I feel like I'm comfortable moving forward. I mean, at this point, everything, like I said, is still up for discussion.
Okay.
This gives us a lot to work with.
Okay.
Perfect. All righty then. I think we're going to move on to the Mill Street parking realignment.
Yes, so looking at our 2023 projects, we're going to slurry seal over Mill Street. So in other words, all of the parking stripes will be gone and they'll be redone. You approved those contracts at an earlier meeting. And we're just about to finalize all 3 of those projects. And so looking at that, especially all the snow and ice that we dealt with this winter, we looked at, maybe it's time to look at moving parallel parking to the south side where we can actually restrict parking while we're dealing with the snow and ice early in the morning, and then move the head-in parking to the north side of Mill Street. I did send out letters to property owners, and then I walked up and down Mill Street, basically handed out maps somewhat like this. I think you've got them up there at your table as well. And then we had a meeting, basically met with anybody that wanted to meet with us on Mill Street as well. And then we also put information up on Facebook identifying what we would do. I think that we're kind of at that time where we either maintain the parking that we have, except it's not going to be exactly like it is, because we're going to have the engineer basically determine parking, even if the parking stays the same, parallel on the north side and head in on the south side. We're still going to have an engineer basically give us a striping plan, so it's basically compliant with certain distances. I've used the word nilly-willy. There's a lot of red curb and blue curb and yellow curb, and there's no signs that indicate what they're supposed to mean, even though we may all know what red and blue and yellow mean. However, we think that we have to have either grind that current paint out and figure out what we need to do as far as striping, and put signs where we need to sign. I think that we've talked about the fact that our ordinance was done in 1985 and 1987, and things have changed a lot, and it's time to look at not just the striping and updating Mill Street, but it's also time to update our ordinance as far as snow plowing and street maintenance, including street sweeping, so that we can actually maintain that street. I'm going to let Jeremy kind of talk a little bit about the condition of Mill Street, and just so that you kind of have an idea that, eventually there's going to come a time we're going to have to replace, completely improve that Mill Street.
So, I guess how this all came into being is the slurry seal, so we will blank out all those lines. We're doing some road patch back, and we've seen significant snow and ice, ever since I've been here as well too, and it's really hard to maintain that south side of the street. So in conversations with some of the projects we have coming up, we tossed around the idea of maybe flip-flopping that parking, maybe potentially restricting all overnight parking on the south side of the road. So a lot of ideas are out there. But what we are seeing from the ice buildup over the last few years is some of the road and parking spaces are starting to deteriorate from that OGFC. Hence, the slurry seal is going to be a great preventative tool that we're going to use to preserve that road. But we also do have a contractor coming in to do some cutout and patch back before that goes in. So there's some portions in front of Tequila's, BSB, and the architect company right there. And then in front of Taco Boy, you can really see if you walk down the sidewalk where that's getting a lot of water intrusion and heaving. So that'll be cut out and replaced. So we're really looking hard at trying to find a good alternative to control some of that snow and ice and keep that water intrusion out of the south side of the road. And that's kind of where this idea all came from, is basically to control the snow and ice. The handicap parking is really non-existent down there. We've seen a lot of semi-blue curbs that, don't necessarily represent the appropriate amenities for handicap parking. So we're really, that striping plan is going to go and address a lot of those deficiencies that we have. We've heard that over and over, and even in the parks plan, Ryan had mentioned that ADA accessibility. It's becoming a bigger factor than I think when the striping plan was originally put on Mill Street. Over the years, it's just been traced, so people have just updated the lines wherever they were, and those curbs have been repainted. So really, with the slurry seal and having a blank slate, we do have a good opportunity to address some of those deficiencies on Mill Street.
It seemed like we had a lot of opposition from that we heard from the people on Mill Street, that they were not for changing the way the parking is. If there was a overnight and it was enforced to remove those vehicles, would that solve the problem in essence? Because then you'd have time, or you have a time frame where there's no vehicles there that you can take care of the snow.
It would help restricting all that parking. One of the problems that we do have down there, and there's really no place for those sidewalks to be cleared except into the street. And so a lot of times if we do come in early, we can get that south side of the sidewalk cleared. With the head-in parking, where before anybody clears their sidewalk, that sidewalk shoveled back into the driveway, and then we get cars parking on it and packing it. The awnings are problematic as well too. A lot of them are metal, and they'll shed a bunch of snow out into the street. We have people driving in and head-in parking. The reason being is having the parallel parking is it does leave you a space from that curb and gutter that you necessarily wouldn't be hard packing in some of that snow when we proposed the striping change. So that was one of the reasons we did propose switching the parking. But a lot of the business owners, we did get quite a good turnout. When we did hold our meeting, there was 8 or 10 people that we had come down, and all of them were opposed to switching the parking, to be honest with you. And,
Right.
and that's what we wanted, was that public input. We're just throwing this idea out and see kind of what people thought.
You know, one of the other things I was thinking about too is we do have a lot of growth that is planned in the next few years, which is probably going to increase traffic. I mean, with what we're doing with the parks, you know, and more people just in general, would it better serve us to make it a one-way street and have parking on both sides that is slanted versus parallel?
I think that'll require a little bit more traffic study from an engineer,
I know.
for me really to look into any type of feasibility like that.
We talked about that during the revitalization project that I know I was a part of that committee before I was on this board prior to the pandemic. And there was a lot of feedback on wanting more parking, but then what would that cause on the side streets of now traffic if they need to go another way? Which street are they going down? So.
And there are communities that have, I want to say, head in and head out parking that there's no parking next to the sidewalk. It's all parking in the center. You know, those are other ideas. Our first option was just to look at switching it for ice control, but that's why I think we kind of need an overall Mill Street improvement project, basically to look at the whole thing with a consultant that, you know, a landscape architect with an engineer that's determining, you know, a much greater improvement for downtown.
Well, when I'm looking at all the different things that we need, I definitely know that having, again, with the ADA and accessibility, I think that should be a #1 priority. We should be trying to work on that sooner rather than later. I would love to do a study of what would be the best way to accommodate all, but I don't want this to wait a year for us to get to it. Like, this should be happening now. I have a neighbor who is in a chair who lets me know what's going on. So that would be my focus. I do like the idea of updating our code. And I get alerts from San Juan County, Silverton, when they're closing off roads for snow and for plowing. And so I don't even know if we have signs out there for, you know, between these hours that there's snow removal or something so that people aren't parking, because I think the ice is a humongous hazard, and I've had to park on it, and I'm kind of like, who's responsible for this if someone falls and like cracks their head? Well, exactly.
I'm
And
responsible
so
for that.
I want to make sure that we're watching out for the town, but maybe a short thing that we could also go after is updating our code so that when we do have snow, we don't have cars parked there overnight. And then I never really thought about the concern of the rooftops from the buildings now spitting snow out onto the road. Now, is that?
And
I know-
melting onto the sidewalk as well, melting and then freezing.
Well, yeah, because I'm wondering, I know in my neighborhood, I'm not allowed to shovel my snow into the street. I'm sure there's some sort of code ordinance, something that we have. So what does that mean for our businesses who, I kind of don't want to switch the sides of the street on the parallel parking. Like, my vote would not be to switch the sides, but I need to learn more about the safety part. But how can we help educate our business owners that the way their buildings are structured, we're trying everything we can to keep it so that the parking doesn't change, because that's not what our businesses want. However, their building is contributing to the problem and some of the safety concerns that we have. So are there ways we can mitigate the buildings so that when the snow is running off or something's running off, that they're not now, we've done our ordinances, we're trying to meet everyone's needs, but now our businesses might be part of the problem with just the way some of their rooftops are structured. Like, I don't know if there's a way to.
So if you have a north-south street, you have a little more luck because the sun's going to hit both sides. When you have an east-west street, you're always going to have snow on that south side in the shade under trees and those buildings. Another community that I worked in, basically, we did a Main Street improvement project, and then we made it our responsibility basically to plow the sidewalks. So in other words, we did it with a four-wheeler, basically cleared the sidewalks on the south side, and of course, all the businesses on the north side weren't happy. But the thing is they had sun to take care of their issue versus the town. And we were able to push the snow off into a side street and then remove it really, before that 7 o'clock traffic started. So those are other options. But as you can imagine, none of those sidewalks on that south side we just don't have the equipment. I mean, it really takes a shovel and a person to do that. There's just no equipment that can do it right now.
There's also the buildings you can do snow stops, but it's gonna be a case by case. You gotta look at each roof and see if it would be worth looking at snow stops or things like that to try and prevent the snow from slipping off.
See, I like all of these ideas while looking at maybe a total overhaul of Mill Street versus let's restripe this now based on this plan, because what we're hearing, which I got emails and people are talking to me about, this is not what's desirable, but I understand the safety components of it. So how can we address safety while maybe we do something even bigger with the entire, the sidewalks, the accessibility, all of we're doing all of these revitalizations, like some of those sidewalks, I don't even know that they're compliant.
They're
let
not,
alone
yeah.
Yeah. Yep, I've walked them. So maybe while we're maybe instead of we're gonna flip-flop the striping, what's the low-hanging fruit we can go after first? And then maybe that's where we're talking to the consultant that you're mentioning, Katie, on what's like the bigger picture for everybody that meets our businesses' needs. Because when I walk the street, I'm like, if we flip-flopped having more parking on the other side, I'm just seeing a lot more jaywalking and a lot more options for people to get hit, not walking in a crosswalk, trying to get to all the businesses that are on the south side of the street. But I'm also seeing all the times I could have slipped and broken my whatever in that ice, because I've done that. Because I've gone to pick up food at many of these restaurants or gone to dine there, and it's really icy and it's not safe. And so that actually is a deterrent to me sometimes going to the restaurants. That's why I send my husband. Let him figure it out.
All right. Well, I'd like to open this up to public comment.
On the list,
Yes. Please state your name and address.
Stephen Nicholson, 30 West Mill Street, Bayfield, Colorado, 81122. I've got to go back in history a little bit here because I can explain a lot of what's happened on Mill Street. I moved here in 1976 and was looking to establish a dental practice. At that dental office now, there was an 8 by 40-foot mobile home lengthwise on Mill Street. And Selma Haga owned it. She was a hairdresser, and she wanted to get out. And I looked at it. I said, well, maybe I can make this work. At the time, Bayfield, when you came in here, you didn't know if it was continuing to die or maybe coming back, because it had been dead. And as I spent some time here, I met young people that had moved in the last couple of years. So I thought, this is as good a place as any to try. So anyway, I bought the property and started a practice. And I said to myself, in 5 years, if I'm still here, I'll have to build a building. Anyway, that's the history, and I got, after a couple of years here, we formed a Mill Street Planning Committee. And what we did is look at the potential. It was growing then. We thought, we don't know how fast it's going to grow, but it's growing. So we looked at Mill Street and, you know, thought about architecture, and we realized it's such a hodgepodge. We don't need to dabble into that. What our biggest concern came up was, eventually with growth, we could have a parking problem in Mill Street. That's the only thing we really came up with, is we could have a parking problem. Well, I got to address a couple things here. As time went on, I could see I was going to stay here, and the Tequila's next door to me at the time was gone through its third tenants. It started out as the Pine River Bar, and then it became the Longhorn, and it was another little outfit for a while, but it became the Spur Line. And the Spur Line was very successful, and as they were refurbishing the inside, they built that snow shed in front of the Spur Line. And you got to remember that things were wetter back in that time. This is not an unusual winter. Back in the 70s and the 80s, we had them, not every year, but we had a lot of them, and we had the biggest one ever in 78, 79. So snow was an issue, and it was a big issue on the south side of the street where the office is, because the buildings shade, it's in a snow shade of melt, so nothing ever melted. So we'd come in the morning, we had 2 feet of snow, and we'd have to shovel the sidewalks. And of course, when you're trying to do a business, you don't really have time for that right away. But I thought it was a very ingenious idea to have a snow shed over the sidewalk. And when I designed my building, that was part of the design of the whole building, structure or whatnot, because what had changed was, instead of having to shovel that area underneath the arcade, it stayed on the roof. And it really, on any of those roofs, it doesn't typically slide. Even though mine's a metal roof, the screws hold it, and it drips down into the gutter. I had to extend the roof when they narrowed Mill Street in 1984, which irritated me because nobody talked about narrowing the street, and we were thinking about making sure we had plenty of parking. We lost 30% of the parking when they narrowed it and put parallel parking on the north side. Nobody was ever asked about that when it happened, and it was a very similar time like now, where you're thinking about how many things can we do and improve, okay? Those snow sheds are important. If we have more winters like this, they're important, because what would happen is, we showed up at 8 or 7:30 to work, people were stomping down the snow, and it was much more difficult to remove it from the sidewalk. It all ends up in the street anyway. Nobody wheelbarrows their snow down to the other side of their property. So it has actually been a very beneficial thing, and as much as ice forms on that curb, it's still going to form unless we remove the buildings and set them back 20 feet. So it isn't the big snow removal problem you think it is, because it comes off real slow. Now the north side, it melts even in January. You'll get a melt going there, and it'll be removed. On the south side, it's a freezer. It just is a freezer. And I understand snow removal. I've had to do it myself. But I think, and I also agree with you about parking overnight there in the winter. And there was a while there where we didn't allow it. It might have been 10 years ago. We didn't allow parking on the south side in snow days, so the equipment could come through and remove the snow. I think that's an easily remedied problem by signs. Snow removal, don't park here, you'll be towed away. In fact, we had them for a while. I don't know what happened to them. I came here to talk specifically about changing the parking. I walked out of, I have a flat upstairs from the dental office. I walked out the front door to come down here, and I counted 13 to 14 cars on the south side and 4 on the north side. So every one of those vehicles, if was parked on the north side, would have to cross Mill Street. It's not that dangerous, but you put an 80-year-old person, well, my age, hell, you know, and I don't think it's a matter of safety. I think that is not the way to look at the parking. I think it's a matter of where are most of the people going. Keep the parking on that side. And I think on the south side of Mill Street is where it is. I got no dog in this fight. I'm here off and on of a year, and I take care of my property and do whatever I need to do. So it's not an issue to me, but I know it's an issue to Dr. Preston Knight and Dr. Dan Yeager, because there's a lot of old people that come in there, and I don't see it as being an advantage to change the parking for either snow removal or crowds. I mean, you know, you talked about an open plat to do things. Well, we don't have that down on Mill Street. All those things have been built for years and years. And I think you're better off looking at what can you do to improve rather than what you can do to ADA standards or whatever, because it's already taken up. You know, the buildings are there, and even like back in '76, I looked at what was there, and we had trailers on Mill Street, and you said, well, they're there. You know, we got to live with that, and if things change, they change. The snow removal can be solved very easily with signs. It's a tough job. You guys are doing hard work clearing that south side. It forms glaciers, and the sooner you get on it, the better. That much I can say. But it gets no sun till, well, the equinox. We get it in the equinox. And I'm still, at my age, up on my roof, clearing ice dams. This winter it was a good one. I just said, yeah, I remember these, you know, and we're not going to have them all like that, but who knows? We may have a run of them. But you know, the issues are what they are in a Colorado town in the winter, and the south side of the street is the hard side. The north side gets sun.
Well, we definitely agree with that exactly, and we appreciate your comments, and we'll
Okay.
definitely take that into consideration.
My recommendation is to table this vote, but I know I wasn't here last week, or I would have been, but I was out of town, but I'd think it through a little more, because you have opposition on Mill Street for sure, and
Well, sometimes a vote is in the other direction, so.
yeah, well, whatever.
All right.
I mean, you guys, it's up to you, but you got to wear the mantle once you've done it.
Yep.
That's all I can say.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Do we have anybody else that would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Kira Golian. I'm at 774 Bayfield Parkway. I own Be Thrifty. I'm going to make this brief because I hope that you're all seeing what we're seeing with this plan. But I hope that you will vote against the parking realignment for this 2023 slurry seal project, because my store can no longer receive donations through the front. I own Be Thrifty. And I receive donations, I load out and in furniture, and it would just kill my business. Customers, as you've mentioned, would have to jaywalk. That's where all the businesses are. And I know when I talked to Miss Sickles, she said that jaywalking would be good for Mill Street because it would slow the cars down, but I think it'd be a little dangerous. And especially handicapped and elderly customers having to cross the street, it just really would frighten me seeing them try to cross to come to the restaurants and the businesses. And I had a petition I already made previously to this proposition. There was a parking issue to begin with on Mill Street, especially with in the implementation of the new party venue across the street. It's been killing all of our parking. I've talked with all of the local Mill Street on our weekends. And so on the weekends, there'll be hundreds of people going to this venue, and they'll be taking up our parking. So there already was an issue, and so switching the parking would only make it worse. And so due to this proposal, I stopped getting signatures, but I already had received 7. And also, it would stop us from being able to designate parking. I have these little signs, but I request that there's no event parking, and if it turns to parallel, I can no longer have these little signs that ask that it's for elderly and my customers. I think that we should try to enforce this snow route, and I really liked Ms. Zazaro's suggestion of a text reminder that it's closed, and let's try to enforce it before we switch it over. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments?
All right, mine will be short and redundant.
Can you state your name and address for us, please?
I am Jacob Gullion at 774 Bayfield Parkway. I work with my wife at Be Thrifty, and I'm also against the switching of the parking on Mill Street. Our business is not really by appointment, it's more spur of the moment, so less parking would have a predictable impact on our livelihood and the local nonprofits that we financially support. And you all seem to be very aware of the lack of support, even on the side of the street that is expecting head-in parking. And just to kind of close my short little point, during the meeting on May 9th, the impromptu poll that took place proved that none who attended supported this action, residents and businesses alike. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this subject? Okay. What would you guys like to do?
So on this plan, I only see 2 handicap spaces.
I'm sorry?
I only see 2 handicapped spaces on this plan. Are there more?
He's looking at the
This
long
is
thing.
the plan to switch the parking, and our engineer will, if we keep it where it is, we'll have to determine where those handicap spaces are.
Okay.
So this isn't final, we would have the
Yeah,
engineer,
yeah.
engineer would still bring us something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just a quick exhibit to
Yep.
kind of demonstrate what we were proposing.
It was better than my
What the engineers
map.
are gonna do.
No, I'm just asking if we had any options or.
Okay.
Well, given what we've heard here, I'm not all, I would be opposed to switching the parking around from one side to the other. I remember like that Dennis said that 10 years ago, the marshal used to help the guys plow the snow and he'd get the streets cleared off. And I mean, there wasn't that many cars in the morning and they'd go down through there and get it cleaned off then. And I think that's the route we ought to take and see how that goes. I mean, we had an unusual winter for what it was. I mean, maybe, but.
No, I totally agree with you on that.
I agree because we have the opposition. I think it's important that the business owners get to say what's more important. However, to say that there's not a safety issue on that side of the street is really ignoring a big issue. There's ice there all the time. I don't know if navigating the ice is any different than jaywalking as far as safety is concerned. So if we do decide to keep it the same and we implement signs and texts and enforcing so that we can actually clear, we could maybe try it before we go the other way.
I think it's worth a try to do that first.
So your ordinance, if you've read it, basically it requires that the town manager with communication with the public works director declare a snow route. And of course, we typically know what that is. So I think that your ordinance needs to change.
Okay.
Putting up signs doesn't give you any enforcement power.
Right.
Changing the ordinance, then putting up signs, and then enforcing parking is a completely different animal. And I don't know how they did it before because there was no ordinance that allowed them to do it unless it's long gone, so.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I would be for creating an ordinance for this and following that plan.
Yeah,
personally.
could we do, no parking between 10 o'clock and 6 AM.
Usually
for
11
months of
o'clock
the
to
year.
7
I'm
is
making some
typical,
numbers
and by
up.
that time, we have the chance to clear it out. In other communities where I've worked, and we actually had an ordinance that supported that, we would just put flyers in the windshield wiper for a while, around October or November, and then when they were still parked there when we had a snow event, either they got towed or they got a citation, one or the other.
I think that's all I mean, you can ask Ron, but I think that's all they did 10 years ago is just, when we knew a storm was coming, you start putting flyers on the cars, and if somebody was a problem, they get the marshal to go knock on a door or whatever and get it taken care of. I mean, it was, small town politics.
Do you need any direction from us? Do you need a motion for creating an ordinance, or is that just
So
giving you
I
direction?
have a couple motions for your consideration. I have the one motion to maintain the existing parking as it is. And then other optional motions are a motion to direct staff to provide a draft ordinance amending the snow removal and street sweeping. And then motion 3 would be motion to direct staff to propose a 2024 budget item that would include Mill Street downtown improvement planning, public input, and final design for future sidewalk projects. Even though there's one agenda item, these are all within the Mill Street parking, and I would defer to your attorney if the other two motions are not necessary.
Yeah, Katie, I would like to see, like, as you said, another design for a sidewalk project. Like right now, I mean, I don't think we're for this flip-flop, but you said something about possibly something down the middle. Would that give us more parking spaces? Would that make things safer? Like, I don't.
You're not going to create more
So,
parking spaces.
okay.
What you're probably going to do is create safer, more ADA accessible, and a safer sidewalk. We're also dealing with stormwater as well. That's another ordinance that we're going to start to comply with as well. And it would probably be an enhancement as well. Bump outs to provide more pedestrian safety when they're actually wanting to cross Mill Street. Even today, somebody was crossing Mill Street, and I couldn't see them behind Tequila's, but I noticed something in a window, and I just kind of slowed down, and it was a pedestrian trying to cross, so bump outs would help a lot as well. So anyway, I'll defer to your attorney if these three motions are not compliant with the agenda setting.
I have a question actually for Nicole. The current ongoing project, sidewalk renovation project, some of the curb and gutter that was done on the section here is clearly ADA compliant.
Yes.
Is that not something that's being addressed during that project as we are seeing the upgrades to that's been budgeted?
Yeah, so right now we have a grant to do the east side, which goes from Bayfield Parkway, from
Buck Highway.
Buck Highway to Church Street.
Mm.
And then we're hoping to get some additional grants to continue moving to the center, but the south side center's gonna be the hardest because we do have the overhangs. The sidewalks are very narrow there. Ideally it's 8 feet, but we know in some places we're not gonna be able to do that, just because of existing conditions in road width. And so that's the ideal, but as we get closer to the center, it's gonna become a more difficult, more expensive project to try and solve some of that.
But the ADA compliance is being taken into consideration? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we really can't put in new sidewalks unless we're addressing.
Okay. And before we move the direction of any kind of ordinance, I do have a question for a couple of the restaurant owners that are present. How late are you guys open? So that way that if we were to structure some type of ordinance or move towards that we wouldn't be conflicting your business or operating hours?
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Would you mind, Greg?
What's that?
Would you mind?
Yes, please.
Name?
Yes.
Greg Allen, 53 East Mill Street, Bayfield, Colorado. The latest we're open is 9 o'clock. We often have people there that walk in right at 9. They get served. They're usually done and out by 10. So at 11 o'clock, no parking out between 11 and 7 is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's not really an issue. We also, when we shovel our sidewalk, we shovel it back into our patio. So I know that that's not going out into the street. And we rarely have cars there before 10 o'clock.
Okay,
So,
thank you, appreciate it.
Is the street more problematic where the overhangs are? I don't know. Or is it about this?
It's case by case. 'Cause
Yeah.
in some areas you just have, I think someone had said something by where that multi-use building on the corner of, on the southeast corner of Church and Mill, they have really narrow sidewalks, and so in the wintertime, the snow's never moved, you just have a trail there, so, and they don't have an overhang like some of the other ones do, so it's such a case by case, some overhangs create issues, others, it's just.
can I address that?
And
Sidewalks look like.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to come forward again.
Do I need to put my name on it?
Of course, we forgot.
Greg Allen, 53 East Mill Street. So the biggest problem with that sidewalk and the fact that it is perceived to be narrow is that it was a garage at one point in time, and so it slopes down to the road level. So when people drive into that, instead of there being a curb that they pull up against, they actually pull up on the sidewalk. So it's not, the sidewalk is the same width as all the other ones, it's just perceived to be very narrow because people pull up onto it because there's not a curb that stops them. So replacing that section of sidewalk, and I know that's part of what you've been talking about, would alleviate that problem there to a great extent.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
And another thing to consider too is all the timing of the storms as well too. I mean, it would be great if it would snow starting at 11 and then stop at like 6 o'clock, and then we could get all the snow moved and it would be clear. So it all
get all the-
depends. So if it snows a bunch during the regular business hours, it'll start at 4 o'clock in the morning, it'll snow till 2. We get all the business and the traffic, it goes up there and it accumulates. So, I mean, we really can't control the weather. What we're trying to do is control the ice. And so we also talked with Michael as well, Marshall Hogue, and we talked about enforcement. So, I mean, this is a direction that is acceptable as well, too. We're trying to provide some options and maybe some solutions. We did get a lot of complaints this year and in previous years. I think the first year I was here, 2018, we had a lot of snow, and with the icing, it is challenging for us to keep it clear.
Okay.
So I have a question about the motions. Are these, can
So-
these be in conjunction with
Yeah,
each
so
other?
we're talking motion 1A, option A, motion 2, option A, motion 3, option A.
Okay.
And my suggestion is that these not be in the form of a motion at this point. Direction from the council would be appropriate. It's not really, there's no necessity for a motion.
Okay. So is everybody in agreeance of motion 1, 2, and 3, all options A's?
I'd just like to comment, I think for talking about the ordinance with the snow removal, I think we should include an option to, there's just no parking today versus no parking between 11 and 7, and then we just need to determine how we communicate that and work with our business owners to make sure, because again, if it's constantly snowing all day, we need to make sure that we can plow the snow, and this is not gonna happen for like months on end. This would be like a one-off occurrence where our Public Works Department is determining that we need more time without cars, packing down the snow, causing the ice. So I think maybe there's some things that we could discuss with the ordinance that would give us a little more flexibility if we needed to say, you know, the road's gonna be closed, the parking is gonna be closed until 11 a.m. versus people can start parking at 7. Because clearly if we're in the middle of a blizzard, I think the preference would be that people are not out and about anyway, because now it's a safety concern.
Can I ask for clarification? Because it sounds like you're saying if it's snowing all day, close the street all day, and that doesn't work for businesses. But I like the idea of the delayed opening, just like we delay school opening for the children. You have a delayed parking, it's at 11, kind of. Is that what you meant?
Something along
Okay.
those lines. No, because I know we can't close the street, but I'm just thinking of, again, all of this is for not, if it's only between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. that we're asking people not to park. And then we're still trying to get things plowed so it's safe. I mean, because I'm sure all of our businesses would want their customers to be able to park safely as well. And if we're managing plowing and possibly even sidewalk plowing, I think just so that there's some flexibility to extend the 7 a.m. for a one-off type of purpose, not a permanent anything, but I don't want
Sure.
it to be so restrictive that it's only in those timeframes.
I agree with that, because especially like, I know this year was odd, but who knows what next year is gonna be like, and there were days of snowing, and you wait until those days are over, we're gonna have the same problem. And we don't wanna close down the street, but maybe we have to close down sections to keep that ice from
So are
damming up.
we all in agreement then that the direction is for motion 1, 2, 3, option A? Or does anybody want something different? You're good, Tom? Charlie?
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm still reading.
Yeah, I'm fine, yeah.
Okay, I think that's our directive then, if we're not doing a motion to go with options A on motions 1, 2, and 3s that you have written.
Do we need to say those out? Does everyone have a copy of what those are? Do we need to say those out loud? So the audience knows what we are.
I can repeat those for the public
Yeah.
record.
Thank you.
Option A, regarding the street, is motion to maintain the existing parking parallel on the north side and head in on the south side of Mill Street and finalize the striping plan as the parking is today. There may be some differences, but, and then motion to direct staff, to direct staff to provide a draft ordinance amending snow removal, street sweeping. Direct staff to propose a 2024 budget item that would include Mill Street downtown improvement planning, public input, and final design for future sidewalk projects. And that does not include the east gateway, it's just everything in between both gateways.
Okay,
Thank you, Katie.
looks like you've got direction.
Thanks.
So let's go ahead and move on to 3D, Cheryl and Dan Lynn, donation of an outlot southeast intersection of Mars and Mustang.
I'm not near as verbose as what we've already heard.
If you'll do
Dan
us a-
Lynn,
thank you.
4173 County Road 301. Thank you very much for allowing me to present tonight. We purchased a property in a tax lien certificate on Tract 1 of Mesa Meadows subdivision in 2017 and subsequently obtained the treasurer's deed. We realized the tract has no building potential, and we knew it at that time. But we did want to complete the process of obtaining the treasurer's deed. It has been utilized by the students of Bayfield Elementary as a pathway to and from school along Mustang Lane. Bless you, Nicole. I did bring my maps in case. The property she is outlining is the one in question. It's right across Mustang Lane from the elementary school, and any of the kids moving west are using that lot as a walkway. Otherwise, they're walking down the middle of the road, so there is no sidewalk. The lot to the to the west of that is a Tract 2 of Mesa Meadows, and they have a 501c designation on that particular lot. How they obtained it, I have no way of knowing. I was asked to contact them, and I did so, and it's been over 2 months, and I have received no response. The property itself is 0.99 acres that we're looking at in red. The property they have a 501c designation on is approximately 2.5, I believe. 2.44. We desire to donate the property to the town of Bayfield so that we might get a charitable contribution, which would drastically help us with our federal and state taxes, which haven't been going down of late. We were informed by the town of Bayfield Community Development that Mesa Meadows HOA, again, has it 501c, and we contacted them on an exact date, March 8th. And as of today, we have received no reply. The town of Bayfield Community Department has informed us that the town may be willing to accept the tract if Mesa Meadows does not, and we respectfully request an acceptance of our donation. I know the town is in tights for having money to take care of any additional properties, but I would hope that this would be something that would be a benefit for sure to the school and for sure to the town of Bayfield. Questions?
Seems pretty straightforward.
Let me add a few things, just because I did do some research on the history of Mason Meadows. And as Katie disclosed, I actually live in Mason Meadows, at one of the first homes I've been there 16 years. So I've seen a lot of the development, so I just wanted to disclose that. But in my research of Mason Meadows, this piece was part of the larger parcel that was annexed into the town, for Mason Meadows. And, it was part of the Phase 1 subdivision plat, which essentially was this area. And the trail was actually required by the town in lieu of installation of a sidewalk along Marsh Street. And so that was, I did find the history of that, but the trail was put in by the developer of Mason Meadows. Now, the developer held on to this property, and I'm not sure why it never got transferred to the HOA. But, so, and that's why the direction originally was checking with Mason Meadows, because it was originally part of that project. It was part of that subdivision, part of that annexation. And it was a requirement of that development, in lieu of the sidewalk along Mars. And so, that was the original direction. And also, you know, we did disclose that we do have a tight Parks and Rec budget. It's a small piece of trail compared to the HOA's trail that goes down to Buck Highway. And, I think there is some concerns from the staff perspective with just the maintenance of that. The trail's also in pretty rough shape, and so we take it on as the town, we're probably gonna need to look at some improvements or rebuilding of it, because of the shape that it's in.
One other item, we did know one of the landowners adjacent. In fact, it's the biggest lot on the east end there, right next to the triangle piece. And we offered it to him as well as the other landowners that were adjacent. And we got no response there either. They said they couldn't really tackle that project. Questions? The actual value listed by the county right now is $19,340 of that parcel.
And Nicole, I know you've been doing some research on this parcel. There is, other than having the required trail, because there's no sidewalk access on either side of the street other than the trail on the north and south sides, is there anything else that can be done with that property other than having a trail?
So in my research, I did find that the majority of it was designated wetland.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So, and that was back when it was annexed, so I did find the information on that. So there really isn't, except for the trail, which has already been disturbed area approved, there's nothing else that you can really do without disturbing those wetlands.
Well, that's probably not something you want to hear, but I think it really is the responsibility of the HOA, since that's what it was initially designed for. I'd like to hear what they have to say first before we make any kind of decisions.
Yeah, we can have, I was actually surprised to hear that no one from ACCU, who's the property management company, has been in contact with you, because that's the direction they have been given by their HOA board. Full
That's good to
disclosure, I'm
know.
on that board, and it's in the notes too.
I do have name and contact information.
For Carly Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Okay, yes, because we.
She's the one that we wrote to on March 8th.
Okay. Happy to follow up with her in my non-town trustee position to see what is going on there.
That would be wonderful.
Yes, because that's not the impression that I know that I'm under.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Not at this time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have any public input on that? Okay. All righty. No public input. I would like to see what the HOA has to say first.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect, that no decision will be made by the Board of Trustees until the HOA has responded to that?
Yeah, motion to table.
Yeah, motion to table until there's a response from the HOA.
Anyone
Or
want to make
deny
that
it.
motion?
I would like to make a motion to table that, the decision on the request for Cheryl and Dan Lynn's property until we hear from the HOA regarding their position. Anything else? Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Yes?
Trustee Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Yes. Okay, let's move on to the approval of minutes.
So do we have, sorry, on that, do we have an obligation to the Lynns to let them know once someone's heard, like, what's the next steps there? Like, is it
So
They would come back to Bayfield to ask to get back on the agenda. Once If they've in heard fact from the HOA? there was Okay, some thank you. problem I with was the just like, HOA. how do we close the loop on that? Okay, Okay. thank you, sorry.
Anybody have any questions on the minutes? If they're good, I'd look for a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
I second that.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Yes?
Trustee Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, Public Works Director report. Jeremy.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and trustees. I did prepare a report for April. The first thing I'd like to point out, we did have 98 one-call tickets. That's not a typo. So that's almost 100 locate tickets that we processed in the month of April. We do have Clear Networks working in town. And yeah, that's triple what we normally get. So it's been super busy. And I'm thinking we have a lot of engineering projects coming up as well. We've had quite a few engineering tickets come through. So hopefully we'll see that tick back down some. Typically in the summer, we're around 40 to 50 is normal. We had a couple water leaks in April. One up at Tamarack, just, I guess it'd be west of the middle tanks. It was a service line, required excavation for repair. And then we had another water leak on Orchard, right there by the new subdivision on the corner of Orchard and Clover. That also required excavation and repair. Both of those pavement patches, we did put it back in-house. We've had a hard time getting asphalt contractors to come out to do those smaller jobs. So we're attempting to patch those back so we don't leave that gravel road and road unpassable and not maintained for a long period of time. Nothing really exciting in the sewer system, no calls for service. The wastewater treatment plant, we did see our BOD numbers climb since January. So probably about 100 mils increase, which is our biochemical oxygen demand that is directly tied to our solids loading. So it's coming in. So we're looking into that. It's interesting, it started in January, and it's been consistent throughout the last 3 months. So next steps, well, I think we're going to look into some of the math and the reporting and make sure that that's correct. It's just interesting how consistent it is over time, and we've really had no change in the system. Irrigation came on first of the month. The only ditch that's still not running is Los Pinos. Yes, the streets right away. Like I said, we have been performing those smaller patches and potholes in-house just to try and be a little bit more efficient. Myself and Michael attended a CRWA conference. A lot of talk about PFAS, the forever chemicals, and lead copper rule changes are coming up in 2024. Okay. So we'll be working on a full service line inventory the rest of this year. Bonfire is almost done through town. That is the partner for our conduit lease for fiber with the tribe. They should be wrapping up the month of May. And we also have Deeply Digital Clear Networks. Hopefully will be done. They're saying June, July, but I'm thinking it's looking more like August before they get that middle mile built out.
Very good. Thank you, Jeremy. Any questions for him? No questions.
Thanks.
All right. Let's move on to our Community Development Director report. Nicole.
Just a couple things. utilities. And then the last meeting in June, we're gonna be talking about water. We're gonna have our water engineer come and just talk about Bayfield water, similar to what you guys heard, when we had our meetings with the board, but, more specific to the general public and what their concerns and questions would be. As well as we have a lady named Molly, she's with Forecourt, and she's gonna come and talk about their doing a gray water, program with Lopata County and recycling water, and she just has a lot of background on water conservation, so she's gonna come and talk to you as well.
Oh, cool.
And then, like I said, we'll try and put some draft language together and then get it back to the working group to review that, provide comments, and then we'll do a public draft, which we'll release to the general public, allow, maybe I'll use Brian's help to create some sort of survey and questions that I have to ask. And then, essentially come back to the planning commission and board of trustees for final approval of any proposed changes. Also for grant updates, the Highway 160 pedestrian crossing, like I said last month, we have chosen Short Elliott Henderson, SEH, to be our project engineer. They are ready to go out there and do pedestrian counts, but CDOT is still holding up the process, and I have not received my notice to proceed, and that means if you do any work without that, they don't cover it under the grant. And like I said before, $30,000 grant, and it's taken essentially over a year, and I still don't have the ability to move forward with it. And I told them that next week's our last week of school in Bayfield, and I don't know if I will be able to proceed until fall now. So I'll keep you posted on that.
That's a
Kind of
bummer.
disappointed with, all the work we put into it to try and move forward and possibly not be able to do it until fall. But we still do want to do a count this summer just to see the general population and how they're moving. But we won't get the school counts, probably for fall now.
That's a bummer.
There's, you know, right, some miracle we get something in the next couple days. And then the Main Street grant, we kind of talked about that. That's the east side sidewalks. Our engineer SGM is moving forward with engineering plans to help us figure out what those sidewalks are gonna look like so that we can start construction on those this summer. And then the transformation affordable housing grant for Cinnamon Heights. I did hear from DOH, Division of Housing, that I should know by May 23rd on what type of funding we're looking at, and they do call me every couple of days with some questions, so I know they're really working on it in our project. So I'm hopeful that we'll see some funding for that as well.
Awesome.
And then the last one is just the congressional directed spending for the signal. We, as I mentioned on Tuesday to the board, we have support from Congresswoman Boebert as well as Senator Hickenlooper, and we're just waiting for Senator Bennett. Hopefully all three will support that funding request, and we asked for 100% to construct the signal next year, so hopefully we'll see a signal in construction next year.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, and that is what I have.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, let's move on to the town marshal report. Marshal Hoge.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and the trustees, as well as our citizens here tonight. It's going to be kind of a short one because I got all my notes from Sergeant Nal Stritzel, and so I wasn't here for April, but I was getting a lot of input from all of them throughout the month since I got, I guess, voted in or appointed in the middle of April, but I kept in close contact. First thing is with Lieutenant Tischer of La Plata County. I want to thank him for the 8 months of service he did. He did a wonderful job doing everything that we needed to keep afloat, and we were working hand in hand since I was nominated as the new marshal, and we worked all of April together to make sure things were running so that when I showed up on May 1st, I was able to have not such an overwhelming windfall of information, but it still was a tidal wave. But we handled it very well, and he did a tremendous job. Some of the summaries for the month. On April 12th, the BMO initiated an investigation and reported threats from a video post at the school. The subject was identified and handled by both the BMO and the Bayfield High School. The disposition was handled by the high school. We thought that was the best route to go, so they did handle everything from that point on. We did not do anything criminally. We did all the criminal work, such as subpoenas and everything like that, but we let the high school handle it from that point out. On April 26th, the members of the BMO played in a first responders soccer game against the Bayfield United soccer team. And in fact, we play basketball against them tomorrow night if you're all interested in showing up. I will not be playing, reasons. But the other things, when we go to call for service, we had a big increase in suspicious activity calls, which is not uncommon as when the weather starts breaking. People are getting out into the public. So people are calling, identifying there's, hey, I haven't seen this person in this area before. The majority of them, basically all of them, were unfounded. There was no problems going on, just people being out and about because the weather has changed. When it goes into priorities that we are currently addressing, we have 2 open vacant positions for patrol. We have just recently listed them both locally and nationally to try to bring in some qualified candidates for us to hire and or put through the academy. We have also a data thing we're going on with Durango. I just spoke to the chief yesterday. He is in agreement that we need to get the agreement between both agencies done ASAP so we can start getting our data shared with them. So that was done yesterday. The grant management, we did the meeting today. I met with them. We are still on board doing what we have always done, and we're going to proceed with the board as it was. But they were trying to vote us out as a voting member, and I spoke up, and they said, I told them, no, leave us on. We have a new direction. We have a new leader here. We are going to be 100% involved from now on. So they changed the vote. We're still in. Patrol vehicle purchases, with permission, I call it surplusing, but we give the cars to Jeremy to take all the striping off, everything like that. So we had a Humvee that was been sitting in your garage for how long? Okay, that's good.
More, I don't know.
It's been a long time, right? Yeah. So we got the permission to get that broke down so we can auction it off. We also have a 2012 Durango that had been sitting in our parking lot for a year or so. Mm-hmm. So we've got that started. It's over at his garage. He's getting all the stripes taken off. We're getting all the gear taken out so we can auction that off as well. And then we're in the process of trying to search for new vehicles, but Ford Fleet and other fleet companies have discontinued making any vehicles for this year. So now we're trying to figure out what kind of vehicles we can purchase that we can still fit for our job. And I'm working with a Ford dealership. I'm also working with a new company out of Cortez that does fitting, and they're going to meet with me tomorrow to see if we can fit some of these retail vehicles, such as Explorers and F-150s, for police vehicles. So we're going to be doing that tomorrow. The policy review, I was the accreditation manager for in Gulf Shores. I am a system administrator for Lexipol, so I know back and forth and everything like that. When Lieutenant Tischer gave me the rights to it, I saw everything. I emailed them back and I said, we are missing a lot of policies. They were deleted by somebody years ago and they were federally mandated. So I had to reach out to Lexipol to basically replace all the policies that were deleted, which they did, and I'm going through them and publishing them and putting them out so that we are now up to speed with both state, federal law. And that's where we're at on that policy, on that month. Do you have any questions or anything like that?
No, but that's a big wow.
There's more.
Deleted
They'll be
it.
amazed.
Oh, no, I hear some.
I'm on the next one too, so I just thought I'd stay
No, you're
here.
good. If you want to continue, we'll start with the proposed branding.
Okay. First of all, to the citizens, if you haven't met me before, my door is always open. Come by, visit, and talk. I've already had several people come in and talk. But what usually happens is when I show up in the morning, within a half hour, my day's different. So I got meetings here, there, doing this, putting out fires here, there, but it's been fun, it's been enjoyable, and I can't wait to meet everybody else in the community. But one of the conversations I did have with the town manager as well as the mayor, I brought up the idea of rebranding or re-imaging our department. Conversations I had with people when I was going through the process of being hired was that the way we are felt distant. And so I saw the town signs, they're all new, they're beautiful, and the town image has changed. I think it was starting about 2013 through 2016. Everything started changing, but our office. Our office did not change. I want us to be part of the town. I want us to be the Bayfield Police Department, because when people refer to, hey, call the police, it's us. The marshal has a different type of image going through history. I want us to be working hand in hand with the town hall, the town trustees, and not having the appearance that we're separate. And my goal is to become the Bayfield Police Department. That will help us align our goals and direction. It'll also allow me to recruit a lot better, because when I put out national recruitments and it says for a marshal's position or a deputy marshal position, they think of it different than for a patrol officer or police officer type of job. And as we grow, if my data is telling me we're probably looking at doubling our population in the next 5 to 7 years, our department's going to grow as well. And I need to make sure that I am capable of recruiting the best to represent our town and provide the proper security for our town that you guys need. That's my goal.
So what all does it entail? I mean, it's not just a name change. There's probably some things behind it. Uniforms, badges, vehicles. I mean, what kind of cost, and is that something that you're thinking this year or in the next year's budget, or, you know, what is that kind of that game plan? You know, I was going to talk money, right?
Of course.
The first thing is the ordinance. We have to have an ordinance in place to allow us to make the change. The uniforms will be one of the things we change up front. We're going for on a grant tomorrow for new body-worn cameras, and part of that grant will allow us to buy new vests because they have to be properly sewn into it, so the vest carriers will be supported by that grant.
Oh, that's cool.
The uniforms we would change, and we're going to work with the community, the town, everybody like that to make sure that we are representing who you want us to be for you. We want to be that department that you guys rely on, and that we handle everything the way you want. And we're approachable. I want us to be approachable. The cars will go by attrition, which is the way our fleet is. I got 2011,
fast.
2012, 2013s. They're gray. The only thing I would do right now is just take the marshal off and put the police department on.
So stickers.
That's it. Just stickers. They'd stay gray until that car is rotated out. The new cars will reflect the design that we want to put out to the public, whether we go, and it's easier to get black cars than it is any other car. The blue cars are hard to find, and they're a rarity. And even in the companies I do know that sell them retail, the PPVs, which is the police pursuit vehicle package, they're all either black or white. They're never blue. And so it's easier to do that, and we'll just mark them up the way the community wants us to have them marked. And then by attrition, we're just going to start pushing them in. We got 2 cars we're getting ready to look at purchasing, and they're both going to be black. And then we're going to go with the new design.
So are you thinking color scheme wise, a blue, like black and blue, or
Black and white.
black and white? Oh, okay.
There is a company, and I did a lot of research, there's a company in Durango that does wrapping. And we can wrap the doors, and they also print the wrap to have our emblems on it. Now, the cost, when he told me a whole car was like $5,000, I said, well, I don't want to do a whole car. Let's do it, the 2 doors on each side, we'll be good to go. So that drops the cost drops a lot, but we can do that as well. So, I'm sorry, I do have a cold, so every time it fades in and out, I'm trying to keep a cough.
You're okay. You can cough if you need to.
Oh, no.
You don't have to talk that fast.
No, I do. I'm usually really, plus but any other questions or anything like that?
I don't, but.
Just could you explain the difference perception-wise in the industry between marshal and police?
There's 2 different things for a marshal. You have the U.S. Marshal, which is a fugitive hunting company. That's the division of the U.S. government that goes after people that have warrants. And if, like, let's say we have a felony warrant for someone that's violent. They don't really do nonviolent crimes. If we got a violent crime and we got a felony warrant, we can't locate them. We're able to turn that case entirely over to the marshal's office, and they will use their resources to go capture them. Okay. The other one is the old Gunsmoke, Marshal Dillon, and all those things. That's the image that some people also have. Okay. So it's kind of hard to, when I'm recruiting cadets, to give them the differentiation between a town marshal and a police officer.
Okay.
Everybody really knows what a police officer is for the
Got
community.
What's the staff think about this?
I've talked to them, and most of it I kept it kind of quiet until it was posted because I wanted to have them have their independent point of view with me, not have a group, hey, shoot. a lot of it was, wow, that's pretty cool. And they're really appreciative of the new direction that I want to take. Because I talked with them, like I said, when I got hired, I told everything was transparency. They all know my door's open, I talk loud, so they know what I'm trying to do. And I talk with them about everything that I'm getting ready to present, because I don't want them to be shocked by me presenting something and they don't know. So they all knew about this. None have come up to me to say, I don't like it. Most of it that have come up to me, I don't know if they're afraid to tell me they don't like it, but it's one of those, I like it, that's pretty neat. I said, okay.
I mean, it makes sense to me when I think about the other municipalities in the area that have marshal's offices, and no, I don't believe they do. So they all have police departments. So I always thought it was unique in Bayfield that we had marshals, but I didn't understand really what the difference was between a Durango police officer, a Pagosa Springs police officer, or a Bayfield marshal. Like, I didn't know if it was like a regarded higher or not, or what that means.
In
but-
legal terms, we have the same authority.
Okay.
It's just a perceptional of the name. And when I talked, I want us to be more in line with the direction of the community as we go forward.
I like a BPD.
Any other questions?
So the first part would be directing staff for an ordinance. The Bayfield Deputy Marshal's Office was created in 1938, and actually, other than just a couple minor ordinances, nothing has changed since. So I believe it's just a simple ordinance for a police department.
Correct.
Yep.
So again, direction with regards to drafting an ordinance, perhaps to be presented at your next meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to,
Actually, I don't know that it
You don't
needs
need
motion.
direction.
Yeah.
Again,
It's not a
Just
motion.
direct.
Direction, just
you should
direction.
just
So what do you
gauge to
want
see
to-
whether the
Are you good with that?
trustees are up for that.
Yeah.
Good with it? Lex?
Yeah.
Are you good?
Revitalization.
The
I think
direction.
everybody's for it on the team, so, on the town.
Thank you.
So does that work for direction?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's move on to the land use and special event public hearing. We have the 2018 International Commercial Building Code.
And as I told the planning commission, this is gonna be your most exciting, discussion tonight.
Oh dear.
So right now, the town of Bayfield, through ordinance 406, which was adopted in 2016, we are on the 2015 International Building Code and the 2009 International Energy Conservation Code. And these are the codes that we use to do all our building code reviews, residential, commercial, multifamily, mechanical, plumbing. So everything, we use these codes. And then resolution 533, which I brought to the board last summer, we looked at adopting a new fee schedule. We've been on the same fees since 2016 as well. And things had changed. We weren't even on the 2015 fee schedule. And so we did make those fee adjustments. So those are the two, the ordinance and resolution we have in place right now for our building and fees. So why adopt a new code? Well, a couple of things. We want to ensure that Bayfield's staying up to date. And we want to be up to date with our current code cycles. You don't want to get too far behind on code cycles. And so right now, they just brought out the 2021 code. But I also don't want to be on the most current code as a small town. I like to see how other communities handle the codes, any amendments that come out of them as they use them and stuff. And then we kind of learn by that, because we're such a small staff, it's really hard to be implementing a brand new code that no one else has really used, and we don't really know how it's playing out. But we want to stay as current as we can. We also want to make sure that we're up to date with code changes. Things are changing fast in the building industry, and we want to make sure that we stay up to date with those, especially like life safety, energy efficiencies. We want to make sure that we're also staying up to date with advancements in building techniques. And again, that really, a lot of that is like mechanical, mechanical techniques that are out there that weren't out there, even in the 2015 codes. Energy conservation, that's moving forward pretty fast, and, wanting to make sure we're staying up to date with that, as best we can, but also creating a balance between energy you have to adopt and enforce the most recent energy, this is called the International Energy Conservation Code, IECC. And the three most recent, the 15, the 18, and the 21. And like I said, we're on the 09. And so if we want to adopt any part of our code, we have to go to the 15, the 18, or the 21 for the energy code. And then last year, there was a new House bill that passed that if, now it's saying if you adopt any portion of the code or a whole code after July 1 of 2023, so in a couple weeks, 6 weeks or whatever, you have to adopt a 2021 IECC or better, and we don't have a better one yet. The 2024 is being worked on right now. And so what we want to do is, and I'll show you why we want to stick, we're actually proposing the 2018 codes, and there's some specific reasons why we're not wanting to go to the 2021. And so it's important for us to move forward. If we want to do that, we need to do this before July 1, or we stay on the 15 for a period of time. And so a couple things. These are the codes that we're looking at adopting. So again, the International Building Code, Plumbing Code, Mechanical Code, Fire Code, Fuel and Gas Code, Residential Code, the Energy Conservation Code, Property Maintenance Code, Electric Code. The Electric Code is a little unique because we actually adopt the current National Electric Code based on what Colorado runs. So the town of Bayfield, any municipality or jurisdiction in the state, we do not do electric. We don't have inspections for electrical. We don't do the electrical reviews. The state does all that for the state of Colorado. And so we want to just make sure that we're adopting the current codes that the state of Colorado is on, because they do all of our electrical inspections and reviews. And then the existing building code and the swimming pool and spa code, which is a new one, but it was part of the suite. And we figured if we ever get our rec center, if Ryan ever gets that rec center, we're going to need that code. So, but I'm guessing we won't use that one very much at all. We also are proposing some amendments. As you get these codes, they're written for the international jurisdictions around the world. And so there's some things that we have to look at and make amendments that pertain to Bayfield specifically. And a lot of our amendments have to do with our altitude or our climate. So, you know, we can't be treated like Phoenix, for instance. There's things that we have to do differently. And so I'd say the first amendment, though, is all the codes have a process. So we have a building inspector. If you don't all know him, his name's Dan Naiman. And then we have a plumbing inspector, Will Cathcart. And they do their contract. And so they have other jobs. And but they also make the decisions of the code. And then our fire code is implemented and interpreted by the Upper Pine Fire Protection District and their fire marshal. And so when they make a determination based on the code, there needs to be an appeal process. There's always an appeal process. And so if somebody wants to appeal the interpretation of our plumbing inspector, or building inspector, or the fire inspector, they need a place to go. And the current ordinance in our current building codes, they come to the Board of Trustees. However, when you read through all the codes, it really talks about a board that consists of architects and building industry, because it is very technical, and it's a technical appeal that they're going to come to you, and you're going to want you to make some technical decisions. And so right now, I had mentioned this on Tuesday when we were with the county commissioners, but I did reach out to the county manager and said, we understand, you know, you have a board of appeals for building code at the county level. They don't meet often. When I worked for the city of Durango for 16 years, we met once on a building code in those 16 years. So it's not a board that meets often. And so the county does have a board in place. And I asked, you know, would it be possible to try and maybe utilize their board if we have an appeals process? We would provide the staff, we would provide the minutes, we would do all the upfront work, and we could even go to them if they want to meet at the county building. And so, of course, he said, you know, we need to run it by the attorneys, look at state statutes, make sure it's possible to do that. So I said I put together a proposal if the board is inclined to go that direction with the county. But so as of right now, the way we've written it is that it'd be the Board of Trustees or a Board of Appeals appointed by the Board of Trustees through a resolution. pursue the county option on that one. And again, we're looking at that expertise in deciding if the building inspector is making a wrong call on interpretation of one of these codes. So, the other amendments that we're looking at right now is, again, the codes do reference the International Electric Code. We don't need that because we have to lean on what the state of Colorado adopts, so we pulled that language out. We also require what we call ILCs and surveys, and this is a survey of a property when it's new construction or someone's doing an addition, and we want to make sure that they are within their setback areas, they're on their property. And so we do require those in Bayfield, and these codes do not require that, so we're asking to amend them to add that language. Also, the energy efficiency standards. So the International Residential Code and the International Building Code actually have some efficiency standards written in there, but we're looking at adopting the Energy Conservation Code, which is far greater in standards than those, and so we wouldn't need those because we would adopt our own energy conservation code. And then the last set of amendments that we're looking at pertain to our water and sewer depths, and this is language that's in our current infrastructure standards that are adopted for the town. But again, this is where it's not one size fits all. For instance, water in these codes is 12 inches deep. Well, we need to be way deeper than that for our water pipes not to freeze. And sewer is 6 inches, and again, we need to be deeper. So this is based off of our climate zones. Also, in the 2021 codes do have some language in there now for single-user toilets. Right now, the 2018 codes that we're looking at adopting would still have the sex even on single-user toilets, and the 2021's gone to anybody can use it if it's a single-user toilet. So that means it's not in stalls, it's closed door, one toilet, one sink. Anybody can use those versus having to have a male and a female. And so we thought that everything's going that way, so if a building is able to have a single-user toilet, that they could be, any sex could use those. And then also fire sprinklers. Right now, these codes require every single family to have a fire sprinkler system, which gets very expensive. And most jurisdictions do amend that. Durango has no single family who's required to be sprinkled unless they have a development agreement in place. We right now, on our 15 codes, we have dwellings over 5,000 square feet, and that's in the town limits. So this is not county, this is not rural areas around Bayfield. This is in town limits. Chances are we're not gonna see a 5,000 square foot house. But if one is built, that would have to be sprinkled under this new code. And again, under our current code, we have that 5,000. Otherwise, you don't need to sprinkle 1 and 2 bedroom. And you know, we have hydrants, we have access to water, and so the fire department's also comfortable with that because we're not in the water, we have water, we have hydrants, we have close proximity to all structures. And then we also have to adopt the climate table, which I kind of told you is specific to Bayfield. And so it talks about snow loads, wind speeds based on where we're at. It talks about the frost line depth. Our flood hazard, we have an ordinance, so we're just referring to the ordinance. And then our mean annual temperature. So we have to have this table in place because there's certain things like foundations, how deep foundations need to go. I mean, certain things are based off of our climate information, so we have to make sure that this is pertinent to Bayfield. And so then with that, again, why the 18 versus the 21? And so this is, we dug into this. Again, I know the county was looking at going to the 18, and I think they're just running out of that time to meet the July 1 deadline. Ignacio is looking at going to the 18, so I just shared my staff report ordinance with their town manager. Durango just adopted the 18 last year, and so, we were hoping everybody in our region for the first time, that since I've been here, would be on the same code, but it looks like the county may not be moving forward with us at this time. But why the 18 versus the 21? Again, I kind of mentioned this, we have a small staff. And so we want to make sure that in the code adoption and enforcement of the code, we want to make sure that we have the capacity to do that. And the 2021 has a lot company called Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and they do these studies for the U.S. Department of Energy every year on the codes. And this is where I got this data from. And it's a 9.7-year payback based on the savings that that unit will see with energy conservation versus the $1,800 increase that the builder puts into it, which of course they pass on to the property owner. If we went to the 2021, it would go up $5,452, and it's a 26.4-year payback. The other thing, I did some research on, I have a list of all the jurisdictions in Colorado as of January 2023, and not many are choosing to do the 21 because it is so expensive, and affordability. We're trying to balance that conservation versus affordability right now, especially in Colorado. And so a lot of jurisdictions are choosing to stay with 18, some of them even the 15. And what we're being told by the International Code Council, who writes these code books, is that the 2024 will make some changes to bring that cost back down. And so I think a lot of us are hoping that we'll wait and see how the 2024 codes come out. And like, for instance, my recommendation would be we stay on the 18 codes till 2025. We see a year of the 2024 codes, how it's being used by other jurisdictions, and then 2025, which is only 2 years away. We look at the 2024 codes and going that way and skipping 2021 altogether. And so that's really, I'm happy to answer any questions. Technical things, I'll try and get answers back to you.
Nicole, I have a question.
Yeah.
How does this impact the developments that we have approved, like Mustang Crossing, for example? They, to my knowledge, have not started building yet, but let's say they ready to build their first home, it's after July 1. If we adopt this, what does this mean for, are they now using the 2018 codes?
Yeah, they don't have a building, so only the projects that have a building permit application in place are grandfathered in. So
Okay.
if they get us any building permit applications before this is effective, which would be, if you approve it tonight, it'd be 30 days from today.
Okay.
30 days from publish.
From publication.
Yeah.
So if it goes out Friday, say,
Yeah.
30 days from Friday.
Okay.
So if they get us any permits before then those could be under the current code. Any new permits have to meet the adopted codes that we have in place. And then the other thing we're gonna do is look at our fees again. I know we just looked at them, but we'll just revisit them, see if there's any adjustments we need to make, and if there is, we'll bring those back to the board at a later date, once we know if you adopt it or not, to look at our fee schedule. And, one thing we did do last year when I brought the fee schedule, we did have, a waiver ability for affordable workforce housing, and I want to continue to look at that. I might, massage that language a little bit, but I think giving projects that are interested in affordable workforce housing some sort of waiver, I think would be a really good thing, especially as we're trying to apply for grants and stuff. I mean, looking at any codes we can to encourage housing, workforce and affordable housing is an important thing. So, I will bring that back to you at a later date if you could approve 18 codes.
And the alternatives that you have up there as far as motions, there's actually an ordinance later on in your agenda for consideration that's got all of this in there. Is that correct?
Yes, so
Yeah.
every amendment that I'm proposing, I just kind of gave you the highlights of the PowerPoint, but they're very specific and in the ordinance, and that's how it would be adopted to replace our current language in the municipal code.
Any questions?
And if anybody wants to borrow, I'd love to see them.
I'm going to pass on that one. All right. Well, I don't think we have any questions, so we'll go on to the next.
This is a public hearing, so you'll have to ask for public input as well.
Public input,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's all right.
Any public that want to talk about this issue? Nope. Okay. All right. Now we'll move on. Let's go to the public hearing for 22-26, Callie Rizzi, request to waive development fees.
Yeah, and I know Ms. Rizzi's here today, so I'll just kind of start real quick. And this project was in front of you last month. It's the Fox Farm Tower. We've been working with Ms. Rizzi for a while now, since last year. engineering and attorney fees incurred by the town of Bayfield regarding the above referenced project will be invoiced to me for reimbursement. I hereby agree to pay these fees in a timely manner. I also understand that these fees are not paid. I may be subject to appropriate actions taken by the town to collect these fees as well as delay or deny of a proposed project. And so at this point, we won't issue the demo permit until this gets resolved with the board of trustees. I also just included a lot of email back and forth between staff and Ms. Rizzi and the town attorney, as well as, and she provided, like I said, a narrative about her request for that. And so staff, we've been working with the board. We've updated the building permit fees, we've updated land use fees based on the board's direction that we want development to pay its way. We don't want to be subsidizing development. And so based on those conversations, staff does not support the waiving of this fee. I think our biggest concern is the precedent that it can set for a bunch of other projects that we have. Even just building permits right now, in the last 3 weeks, we've been inundated with building permits. There's a ton of them. And so I just, I'd say staff is most concerned about the precedent that this could set for future projects as well. But I know Ms. Rizzi's here, and I'm sure Jim wants to add. Do I need to state my name and address?
Please.
Yes, please.
Callie Rizzi, 805 Olmsted Lane. Yes, I'm here to request a waiver of attorney fees that were assessed. And let's see here. So I'd like to start with basically a timeline of events according to my records. And that starts with September 13th, 2022. That was an initial conversation that I had with Nicole. And we discussed the demolition permit and the requirements and the processes that would need to be met by the town staff in order for this to be approved. She did express a great deal of uncertainty about the necessity for the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees to approve the permit, considering the backstory, lack of deed restriction on the property, and second replat already approved as a single-family residence without any stipulation. So she said that she would consult with the town attorney and get back to me. So based on that statement, I was under the clear impression that it was not going to be my financial responsibility for any of the fees that were associated with this, that it would be the town staff that was initiating that, and that therefore it would not be assessed. Also, my demolition permit, the permit application that I submitted, was dated September 22nd. That initial conversation happened on the 13th. So my signature on that is actually after the date in which this happened, and I think her contact with the town attorney. So, so with that, also I'd like to mention that the first bill, invoice number 27350, that was dated 10/7 of 22, that was billed, I don't have a copy of the invoice. I just have what you guys see as the town's invoice. So I don't know the detail. It's spelled out in some of this, but what I think that is for that initial inquiry. So that initial bill of $446.50 for 1.9 hours is for that initial inquiry and his response, as well as a telephone conversation. After that, there were a series in October dated the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, and 2 on the 31st. Those were a series of emails in which the town attorney was courtesy copied. He was not included in it as someone that needed to respond, but simply a courtesy copy because he was involved with this conversation. I felt like it was important for him to continue to stay informed. So he was courtesy copied on those, and in one circumstance, blind courtesy copied. The email on the 31st from Katie Sickles said that recommended that Michael Goldman not be included on those emails any longer because of the potential of fees being assessed. After that, the email courtesy copy, blind courtesy copy, all of that stopped because that was made clear. Total of 6 emails, 5 of which he didn't require any any correspondence, it was basically a clear response or a request, or I will get back to you. So that invoice 27490 dated 11/4, for those 6 emails, what I'm assuming, because I don't have a copy of the invoice, 3.2 hours at $235 an hour, totaling $752. So that's a little bit of detail about some of the invoicing and from 2022. And so with that information, I think it's fair to request that the fees be waived. Do you have any questions?
I want to add to, because, Mr. Goldman's invoices include a lot of different projects and correspondence and stuff. I did break down exactly what they said, in this section for all the dates, just the numbers.
I did read that, thank you, yeah.
So Nicole, based on your notes, can we confirm that the first charges were made prior to signing off on the document that you quoted stating that she would be required to pay any additional fees?
So the only one that he has before that date was on 9/16, he reviewed the plats and documents for Foxconn Power Line process. I don't know what his time was on that. Everything else happened, because the application was 9/22, was the date, so all the other ones based on his invoices happened after that 9/22 date.
Okay.
And actually on the 9/26 was, he had a phone conversation with Ms. Bruce, so.
And that was post signing off on any conversations?
After her
Okay.
I was under the impression that because it was initiated by town staff, that any thread related to this.
So all of our initiations with consultants would come from town staff. That's not, anytime we contact an engineer for any review of, we have quite a few developments, all of those are initiated by town staff because we're including a consultant, whether it's an attorney, water attorney, our engineer, all of those are initiated by town staff. In this case, some of these were initiated by the applicant as well as the applicant's attorney.
And that initial contact was really because the applicant wanted staff to approve the demo permit, and after staff reviewed all the minutes and everything, which my time is paid for, she's only paying for the town attorney, but all of the review that we did to determine that it went through a process beyond something that staff was going to be approving a demo permit for, and that's when the conversation went to, well, we then talked to the town attorney and confirmed that he agreed with staff's interpretation of all the previous minutes that we found in our research. So he got a lot streamlined information, like I went through all the research, and even Callie, she received the same, I gave her a lot of information that I found in the documents that I gave to him, so he really just reviewed the specifics of the project.
I want to say sorry to interrupt, sorry. I want to say the initial conversation that had spurred this was because of a questioning in the process itself, that town staff was saying, well, I'm not sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm unsure of the process, that, okay, I see all of these things, this is a very unique situation, it doesn't come across our desk every day, I really need to be clear on that process, so let me get clear, I think is what that.
And that's what I would use him for.
Yeah.
I will say, Michael can attest, there's a lot of unique things that I have to go to him regularly on. But again, if it's project specific, he puts that back into his invoice to us and we build that project because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody who wants to do a development and they want us to do the research and then we want to verify that, but it's all for that project. It's not like a bigger town question. It was a specific to the demolition process. And again, what I said in my staff report is, if we waive the fee for Ms. Rizzi, the town still has to pay that, because Mr. Goldman still spent the time. And so we're still paying that payment to them.
So if we had to use an outside consultant for a specialized process that's maybe not our town attorney, we would go to that subject matter expert to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the person coming to us with a need or a question. And then that individual, if there was fees from that consultant, what I'm hearing is those would then be applied to the individual who's asking us a question that is not within our scope to answer. So we would be doing that for, other than attorneys, for consultants. So if this was something that had a weird environmental concern and we were billed to get that subject matter expertise, then we would be passing on that bill to the person asking the question.
All bills that include a project, an active project, are billed back to the developer. And typically, we reach, the town staff is the one that's reaching out, but we're reaching out for that development specifically.
And so is the way that the individual coming with the questions or the needs, I just don't know a better way to word it, based on signing off on that document, that's where they see that there might be additional charges based on a request that we need to find an outside,
That's correct.
information on, okay.
Yeah, if she did not move forward with the application process and we had this initial communication with Michael, the town would have had to eat that. But
Okay.
she did move forward with the application process.
Okay.
So once they apply and we have a project in place, then we start building that project.
Start billing, but prior to having that application in place, that's where I'm just trying to make sure I understand, because if,
If it turned into a project.
Yeah.
So it'd be the same thing with the building.
Okay.
If somebody had all these questions as they were preparing their plans, and then once they submit their building permit, anytime, and usually, like, for instance, Michael's bill probably didn't come till after, we already had an application in place. Because he's billing, I think, on a monthly basis, and so we probably didn't get his bill till October. So we already had the application in place for that. But yes, that's how we recoup our fees.
okay.
Is that consistent? Are there any exceptions to those rules?
So the problem with the exceptions when we do something like that is that we make an exception for you, we have to make an exception for everybody, and then the town is waiving all of the fees. And it's a cost to the town, which is a cost to our community, which increases, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
snowball effect. It can increase everything that we do, because then we have to compensate for giving away fees. So then we need to raise taxes. You get where I'm
get
going
it.
with that?
Yeah,
It's just
I
that
get it.
it's not something that we typically make exceptions for, based off of those reasons, because if we do it for you, we have to do it for everybody.
Okay.
And so what I'm understanding from Nicole is that this isn't a one-off situation where a developer could be asking a bunch of different questions, and then we're outsourcing consultants or subject matter experts, and then that has historically always been charged to the project. That's what I was trying to establish a history of that.
With what we do. This is not abnormal. We're not
Okay.
doing something different in this review that we would do to somebody else's in terms of their project. And that's why we have our consultants, explain to us what project they were working on at the time, and they break that down. So our engineers do that, our building inspector does that, our plumbing inspector does that, our town attorney does that, so that we know where to bill their time.
Okay.
Does anybody else have questions?
Do you feel like there's any portion of this invoice that you're seeing that is your responsibility? Or are you saying the entirety of the invoice?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Yeah, I think the most recent one, the one from 2023, and I haven't seen, again, I don't have an invoice number for it. I think it's $423. That one is related to the correspondence between Mr. Goldman and my attorney. So that one I feel like would be more my responsibility, since it was my engagement, and I knew about it.
So after your signature was applied on the 22nd, are you telling the board that the work that Mr. Goldman was doing during that time period up until your project was approved is not associated to your project? I'm kind of misunderstanding what you're saying.
What I would say is that my understanding was that this engaging the attorney, Nicole engaging the town attorney, was to get clear on internal process, what the process should be, because this is such a oddball piece of property. What do you do? And so that was the question that was posed. So what's the process? Let's confirm that. Let's make sure it's right. And so it felt like, okay, well, this is an internal thing. And this is the continued correspondence after that up into the 31st when it was made clear that I could be charged for it when it stopped. All of that was related. So it was all the same thread. So for me, I felt like that was continuing the same conversation, and that it was originally engaged by Nicole, and that I had signed the application, the demolition permit, on the 22nd. And so in my mind, they were unrelated. So that's kind of how I saw it. Whether that makes sense or not, I don't know, but that's how I saw it.
So it does on the acknowledgement of fee reimbursement, it says that you hereby understand that all engineering and attorney fees incurred by the town of Bayfield. So even if they had a call on your thing, those are fees incurred by the town of Bayfield regarding your property would be invoiced to you for reimbursement. So, I mean, it states it very plainly in that verbiage, that even if they reached out to the attorney regarding your property, you're liable for those fees.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do understand also that customary charges, as far as what is customary to charge, there's some things that are customary to charge and some things that are not, and that this could possibly fall into something that isn't a customary charge. So to do research on your own historical documents, or to figure out what your own internal processes are, that may not be something that is traditionally charged, whereas engineering fees, other types of attorney fees would be. But I don't know if there's this clear guidelines on exactly what that looks like.
Well, and I would say, when staff did our initial, okay, here's what we're thinking the process would be, the town attorney confirmed that. Ms. Rizzi still didn't like that answer, and so that's where the 926 conversation came in. Because you asked to speak to the town attorney, and so then I reached out to him and was able to communicate, get you guys to communicate on that, so that you heard it from him, because you didn't want to just hear it from me. And so I feel like at that point, Ms. Rizzi was initiating that, she wanted more, to hear it more from the attorney. That confirmed the staff came back and told her about the process.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
Yeah. It's a good point. The fact that the application that I submitted and that was proposed last month to the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees was approved without any replat requirement, without any amendments, without anything. All it required was just a simple approval. So there was there was no major reconstruction of plats or big expenditures that were required. It was simply to be able to propose it in front of two boards and get the approval, which happened pretty seamlessly. So there wasn't any major changes at all in relation to this either.
Right, but I mean, if you were doing anything, say it wasn't involving this, but you had to call a lawyer and ask them a question, they're not just gonna answer your question. You're gonna get charged a fee. You're gonna be asked for a deposit. I mean, when you do have questions like that, I mean, I would never even call up an attorney and not expect to be charged something for it, to be honest. I mean, I get what you're saying.
Right.
I do.
It's
And
two
I do
sides.
feel for you,
Mhm,
yeah.
it's hard.
I do feel for you on that, on it. And I think, maybe if you haven't done developments before, or been in that kind of in this situation, if you've never done something like this before, you may not be aware that this is the process and this is how things can go or turn out.
And just based on what you said about you brought this to the Planning Commission and to the board. I wasn't here last month, unfortunately, so I missed.
Right.
I'm like, what? Oh, sorry, that was my absence.
Yeah.
It was approved without changes because we had the legal confirmation that those changes weren't any other additional work wasn't needed. Is that a correct assumption?
I would say yes, as long as the
Mhm.
variances were approved. If the
Mhm.
variances were not approved,
Mhm.
then they were gonna have to go through replat. So we didn't
Okay.
even know if it was gonna be replatted until the board ultimately approved it with the
Okay.
variances. Because if those
Okay.
variances were not allowed to stay with the land,
Okay.
she would have to replat.
And that would have been a different process.
Yeah, and more expense.
April meeting.
Okay.
Okay, we haven't started with, I mean, I know you guys are with each other, but we haven't started public comment yet. Do we have any other questions here? Okay. Okay. If we would like to have public comment, you can come up and talk to the board.
Thank you for the consideration.
Yeah, of course. It's okay.
Greg Allen, 53 East Mill Street, Bayfield, Colorado. I just want to point out that the plat, the way it was written, the way it was filed, everything on it allowed for the demolition permit to go through the way it was without any further approvals of any kind. And the fact that that wasn't known by town staff and that they didn't understand that is what instigated and caused the attorney to be involved in the thing in the first place. So if I have a lot and I say, I want to have a demo, I want to tear this thing down, and it exists on the plat the way it does, then I simply come in front of the board, they say, yes, you can tear it down. That's the situation here. The plat was written, everything was approved from over the years for this thing to be a single-family building. There was confusion because there's a historic building on it that at one point in time in some minutes in a meeting somewhere, somebody said maybe we should save that thing. But then that got overturned, and the final plat that was filed, the legal document that was filed, had no restrictions whatsoever on it. So the fact that the attorney got involved in this was because town staff didn't understand that legally that's what it was. So the attorney fees were incurred by the town to clarify the fact that they didn't know what was going on. And the plat never had to change. So to me, that's where I told Callie, I think you should fight this because those fees never should have been charged. Any other normal project, you would have gone in, Nicole would have said, yep, a sign here, would have gone in front of the board, would have got approved or not approved, and you would have moved forward. So that's my point.
Thanks, Greg.
Well, I'll just counter that a little bit. The plat had the variances on it that were put in place through the minutes because they were gonna keep the tower. So, again, the plat had variances because the original developer said, we need these variances in order to have the tower and add on and create like an artist studio or something, because the lot was smaller. And so, again, staff, until the board approved the variances again, so, and I don't wanna relive this, because I don't think we're here to relive
Yeah.
what you already approved. But I wanna make that point, that if the board did not allow the variances to remain because the tower was being demoed, and those variances were because the tower was gonna stay, then the plat would have had to been changed. So you didn't know, we didn't know if the plat was gonna need to be replatted until we knew if the board was gonna allow them to keep the variances. And, you know, again, staff supported it. I don't wanna relive this, but, staff supported it, but it was a long process. And the town attorney did have to get involved in that process.
Sure.
Greg Allen, 53 East Mill Street. So what Nicole just said is actually not true. It was passed as a single-family residence, regardless of the tower or not, with the variances in place. And I went through the whole deed, and there was no mention in the final plat that was filed with the county or whoever files that mentioned the tower being there at all. So what she says is an assumption on her part based on minutes from a meeting in a planning agenda, or a planning commission meeting from whenever it was that happened. The final plat that was filed did not have that designation on it. And again, don't want to relive this, and it's not about hashing that out. It's just about what's fair and right when this hand doesn't know what this hand's doing.
Thanks, Greg. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, any other public input? Okay. So the next one is the 2023 Block Party Special Event Liquor License, which I have to recuse myself.
Me too.
And so does Lori. Trustee Cesaro, so we will leave.
So who are you appointing to run this meeting?
Trustee Ah. I picked the most experienced person.
What's that make me, Mayor Pro Tem?
I'll be more than happy to provide some staff input if you would like.
So do we have an app, what,
So we have a application for a special use permit that was accepted by the town of Bayfield. The application is in your packet, and there are just a couple items that I feel that were necessary to change. That this the regulation requires that before a public hearing, it be posted 10 days in advance of a public hearing. It was not posted 10 days in advance of the public hearing. And so I am suggesting that the board consider public input regarding this application. And then because it was not posted, is basically return this to the town clerk for administrative approval under your code that allows that. And this is section 5-73 that allows it to be subject to the town clerk can basically make administrative approvals for this license.
okay. Do we want to hear from the applicant?
Yes.
Didn't know. Randy Burton, I'm Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce for the town of Bayfield, and I don't know what to say. I guess we need to do that.
So it is up to you if you decide to neither approve or deny this application and just send it back, just like a court would send it back, that it wasn't complete, send it back to the town clerk for administrative approval. Their first block party is the third Thursday in June. So even if you considered it another public hearing that was properly posted, but it would still be June 6th. So you're really cutting it close to get a liquor license and be able to purchase, what they need to actually operate this block party. And keep in mind that we have new staff members. It's just a matter of that timing. And in the past, these have went to administrative approval, but because it is a chamber and because there are 3 members of the elected body that are on the chamber, we've had that come to the board for any public input. And I think that as far as the applicant is concerned, I think that I would just suggest from our point of view that the applicant work with us with any outstanding issues if you decide to send it back to the town clerk.
I'm looking to see, are we taking action on this now or next?
You'll have to conclude the public hearing. You can't make a decision within the public hearing process.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak to this matter?
So I'm also from the chamber. And
Come on up and name, address.
We need to go through the process. We missed it.
Well, I think it was a staff error, and I think that, and I know that you sat through a long meeting, but I mean, I think I want to make sure that we're following proper procedure. It may have been a kind of completely different situation if there was nobody that had a conflict of interest on this topic specifically, but that's when it gets really complicated, when we have Actually, the mayor, mayor pro tem, and we have a trustee that are all on the chamber.
Did you want to?
I don't think anybody understands the process.
I'm confused.
Yes.
Once it comes back to my desk.
Completely confused.
Okay, my understanding, is I've seen postings for liquor licenses before. We
Right.
didn't do that. We need to do that, so.
We did do it, we just didn't do it in time.
10 days in
We
advance.
didn't do
Oh,
it 10 days
okay.
in
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
I was called out of town on an emergency, and Amber she was busy, she just didn't get it done.
Okay.
So we missed the deadline by 4 days.
Got it. So this
so-
is something that, as the chamber, we don't have to do. It was on the town.
Yes.
Got it. So we can still pull this off. We just need to get it posted, follow the process.
Well, it's still up to the board. I think that the public hearing was required. We wanted to make sure it was required because of such a strong conflict of interest on this part. Keep in mind that this 3 members that could be up here on the board have a conflict of interest. We felt it was always important for this to come for public review in these types of issues.
Okay.
You know, I can't go back and post it 10 days in advance. However, if the board neither approves nor denies and sends it back to the town clerk may be able to do it tomorrow.
Okay.
How's that?
That sounds great to me. I just want to know, if we need to cancel the block party, because without beer, I mean.
I don't think I would be here very long if they canceled the
Yeah,
block
okay.
party.
That's really what it comes down to. No beer, the block party's going to.
Yeah.
Process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we're trying to do better on special event liquor licenses, and addressing any issues that we may have. It just gets more complicated when we have such, 3 members that would benefit in some ways to this. So we're all learning, and next year we may require that you post it 10
Okay,
days. in
well,
advance. How's that?
that makes sense. We can do that.
So Katie, so we need to close public hearing on
Yes.
this, and then we can make a motion to give it back to
Yeah.
you guys to
Yeah.
finish.
The only thing I would say is that you should probably amend the agenda to move that up to, under,
6C.
yeah, before 6A or something.
Is there any other public that would like to speak? Okay, then I will close the public hearing on this.
And I would just ask that you amend the agenda to move, where is it?
5C?
8A.
8A, move 8A up above 6A.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that?
Yes, you'll need a motion.
Yes?
Stab at this, let the new girl figure out what she's doing
I
here.
can do it.
Okay, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I'd like,
How do we?
I get no respect.
We're all tired.
First I get kicked out of the room every night, and now the first night I'm in the room the whole time, now I get
you're
called
the
madam.
I'd like to make a motion to change the agenda to move action agenda step 8A to right
Above
after-
6A,
Before
above 6A.
Above 6A.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Trustee Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay. So I guess we'll move right on into.
Okay, so I'm asking for your motion to neither deny or approve, instead send the application back to the town clerk Cathcart and comply with municipal code section 5-73.
I'd like to make a motion to neither deny or approve, instead send the application back to the town clerk Cathcart and comply with municipal code section 5-73.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Can I get roll call, please?
Way to find
Trustee
that
Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
And my apologies to the chamber for this.
For clarification, once that notice is properly published, it will come back before the trustees to ultimately approve or deny the application, correct?
So, section,
It's gonna be handled administratively.
yes, it can be
Okay,
handled
great.
administratively.
Just
And
want to
if-
make sure that that was understood.
Yes, and if the town clerk determines that it requires a public hearing, she'll have to tell the applicant that.
Right.
She's not going to determine that tonight. Thank you. Okay, go get our outlines up. So for your benefit, Mayor Pro Tem, 8A, there was an agenda modification. They moved 8A above 6A, and 8A has been handled. The agenda item has,
So we don't have to
action
recuse
has been
ourselves
taken.
twice.
That's correct.
6A1.
Okay. Can we take a really quick break to run to the restroom?
Sure.
Okay.
That's your call.
Thank you. If anybody else needs to go.
I think I'll take advantage because I don't know how much
If it makes you feel better, she asked like an hour ago.
Okay, I didn't mean 9 o'clock, I meant 10 o'clock.
So did the governor sign anything on that land use?
213 failed.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it failed. It,
Glad somebody's got common sense up there.
Senate
Yeah, they're
couldn't
gonna
find the
bring it
votes
back,
for it,
though.
so.
They're gonna revise it and bring it back.
Well, yeah, it's going to come back next
Let's
session.
just hope
but-
it's much better
Put
when
it-
they
yeah.
bring it back.
Okay, we're on.
Okay, we have everybody back. So let's go to the land use action agenda for ordinance 487, the 2018 International Commercial Building Code. Anybody have anything they want to contribute to that discussion? I think it makes sense to use the 2018. I don't want to do the 2021 because of the costs. Why increase the cost? I mean, cost of building right now is so expensive as it is. And
Well,
if they,
I'm not really in favor of this, but it's just because it's raising the cost of housing and, I mean, every time they enact these new laws, new ordinances, housing prices go up. But then the state legislator's holding the gun to our heads again, so
yeah,
there we are.
maybe if we can skip all the way to 2026,
Yeah.
that'd be nice. And they go down, fingers crossed. 27,
3 years there.
27, sorry.
No, I just want to thank Kate, Nicole for all her information on that. That was very nicely presented, so thank you.
Okay, so if we don't have anything else to discuss, I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 487 and publish the title.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call, please. Oh, wait, any further discussion? Okay, roll call. Thanks.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Yes.
Trustee Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and now on to the 22-26, Cali Rizzi request to waive development fees. Discussion.
I was reviewing again.
Yeah, I am too.
Thoughts?
Sorry, I'm still sort of trying to catch up on it all.
Mr. Z, I don't necessarily agree with all of the fees that have been imposed on you. However, the documentation that we've been provided with that does show your signature as of 9/22 is in place for this exact reason. And unfortunately, I do think that the fees that you have seen are your responsibility as per that documentation. And I'm sorry that you're getting hit with that financial burden, but it's my feeling, and I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels on that, is that if we give leniency in this situation, there's nothing to say that we wouldn't have to be confronted with this exact scenario moving forward. And so, unfortunately, I do think that these fees, I can't, say that they need to be waived.
Anybody else have comments?
No.
I would agree with you based off of the signed agreement and the fact that, just community-wide, it's, you can't waive fees for one and not all.
I think looking at this acknowledgement of fee reimbursement, I think what it says to me is when I sign something like this, I should be asking questions of staff if I'm applying for whatever application I'm submitting, is to really have a good understanding of when will you talk to the attorney? What does that mean? What are these engineering fees that may be incurred, so that I'm kept up to speed on if and when this happens. I think I'm learning from this too, that if I'm not familiar with, I don't build things, but if I am, that I should be asking these questions as well, so that when our town attorney wouldn't have had any fees and wouldn't have had to have worked on this if this application wasn't submitted, and so that time wouldn't have been charged. He wouldn't have been reviewing this. And so I think just my takeaway is I would be asking more questions to have a good understanding of those fees, because you're probably like me. I paid $150 for this permit, and you're not expecting a $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 charge after that. But based on what was signed, which I'm guilty of not always reading and understanding when I'm signing. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying from my personal perspective, if I got this bill and reading this, I said that I would pay for any of the attorney fees or engineering fees. So I don't even know if there's engineering fees as well. But maybe, and I know there was conversations between attorneys and maybe you and Mr. Goldman directly, so I mean, there was some interaction there as well that there's going to be fees for, but in reading this, it's all engineering and attorney fees incurred by the town of Bayfield regarding this project. So, I mean, that's where I think I'm in agreement with the other board members who have spoken. And I know that I'll be asking more questions from reading this moving forward too, just so that I have a good understanding of when I'm applying for things.
Okay. Anybody else?
Real quick, and this is just a question maybe for Nicole or the town staff. Is there a fee schedule? If someone going forward, unfortunately, Ms. Rizzi may not be applicable to this, but is there a fee schedule that somebody could request so that if they're going to move forward, they're aware of what
Yeah,
the potential
so
fees could be?
you actually approved a fee change for your town attorney, and our town engineer and also our water engineer also provide their fee schedules on a regular basis. And that's, I mean, that's public information.
Okay.
Yeah, I,
I just think
Maybe add it to the
for the
application.
general public.
Or just notification.
Un-
Like, to
Unfortunately,
notify.
at this point, all input is completed. I'm sorry.
I don't know if the application can reference like the website where we can keep it updated or something. I'd say for notification, the application does spell that out, and that was the town trying to notify people that usually.
In the event there's further research needed, there could be associated costs with it. Okay, makes sense.
But maybe a link to our website where we can keep the current fees schedule. Something we can add.
But we don't have any control over the hours that they may
Right.
spend. I mean, those are,
I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the applicant's request that the fees are waived.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Yay.
Trustee Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All righty. Let's move on to our financial action agenda, April 2023 financial statements.
So at the end of April, a third of our year's gone.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know.
How'd
where
that
it went.
happen?
I don't know where it went. In the general fund, county and city sales tax, of course, is 2 months behind, so it looks low. But and property taxes, I think it was at 50%. We'll likely receive the remainder of that in June when everybody pays their second half of their property taxes. Public safety, personnel relations is over, and that was due to the marshal recruitment. In the water and sewer funds, you'll notice that there has been no plant investment fees so far for 2023. We do have a few building permits that are in pending status, but they haven't been approved, so they haven't been paid, so we haven't collected any fees yet. I went back and researched because Katie caught that, and she was like, we don't have any money in there. Well, that's why. And as normal that I've been telling you guys for the last few months is computer and IT is trending high across all the funds. Everything else is trending as expected. Everything looks good.
Why do you think IT and trending high?
just
We just not
everything. We've
budgeted.
got new employees, new computers, ClearGov, iWorks. We're going to be asking for more Cassell next meeting. More staff, more needs,
just
more.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
All righty. Any comments?
New
Any
website's
questions?
awesome. I'll just say that for the public record.
That we have more people?
What's that?
It's awesome that we have more people.
No, the new website.
Oh, the
is
website's awesome. Okay,
It's very functional.
very nice. All right, if we don't have any input on the financial statements, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the April 2023 financial statement.
I'll second.
Okay, any comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Yes.
Trustee Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Yes. All righty, sales tax report.
Sales tax is still trending high. Bayfield is just 68.68% above last year, and the county share is 4.27% higher.
Wow.
So,
This keeps going. All righty. Let's move on to the truck bed replacement in the sewer fund. Jeremy, it's time to meet your maker.
So, yeah, this is an interesting conundrum here. So basically, we had some cost savings from buying the Ford, that smaller truck that we had. We did have some cracks in a truck bed of one of the other public works trucks. So rather than repairing it, we wanted to replace it with a utility bed. So a service body that's like on the new truck you guys have probably seen in town, where our toolboxes are on the side, and get rid of that old construction toolbox. So that went through. Katie asked if it did go to insurance. It did not. Sent it to insurance, got an insurance claim. The total purchase price of it is $12,050. After the insurance claim of $6,000, the total cost will be $7,000. I think it's in here.
$7,311.63.
$7,311. So we are seeking your approval for that tonight to be able to replace the silver truck bed on a 2017 Dodge with a utility bed that has actual locking toolboxes.
Well, locking toolboxes is a good thing.
That way we're not asking you to buy more tools. We'll lock the toolboxes.
Is that how that works? We gotta have
Lock
justification right there, right?
So you're gonna have an empty toolbox?
No, we'll have the old tools from the construction toolbox in the new toolbox and lock it.
All right, any questions, comments? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the truck bed replacement for $12,300.
I'll second that.
All right, any comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Yes.
Trustee Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Yes. All right, Marshall Office Vehicle Purchase Request.
So it requires that we come back to you to ask your approval to purchase vehicles because it's just a challenge to find them. If we found them, I kind of like to have the marshal be able to purchase them and not wait for a meeting and then put it on the agenda and then wait for a meeting. So we did budget $120,000 to purchase 2 law enforcement vehicles. At the time of budget, we thought we had a $50,000 grant, but it looks like we only have $25,000 grant. So I'm asking for your decision tonight to approve the purchase of the appropriate law enforcement vehicles, including equipping them with the equipment that they need, lights and things, when they become available. If you wanted to, you could have reduced that budget, minus the $25,000 we didn't get, but I'm hoping you'll consider the full $120,000 if we can find vehicles.
So if we did that, where would that other $25,000 come from?
Well, I keep spending that extra interest rate, interest that we're getting. But we also have interest in our equipment replacement fund as well that's not in the general fund. So
Okay.
that could be something as well.
Sounds
And
good.
equipment
Kathy's laughing at me.
replacement. I guess
Any
we
other
don't-
questions?
So we'd be looking at approving this and then giving the authority to purchase without coming back to the board?
That's correct.
Not to breach this budget?
Not to breach that budget, yes.
I personally don't have a problem with it, just because I know that it's such a challenge to find the vehicles, that I'm sure that it's like, you have to hurry, and if he's got to wait for a board meeting to approve it, that may cause some issues in being able to get the vehicles.
Yeah, we had a budget of $9,000 for the full year for interest in the equipment replacement, and currently, right now, we're at $13,000. So, anyway, you're not going to be the full $25,000, but it'd be really close.
Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of appropriate law enforcement vehicles, including equipping within the 2023 budget when they become available.
Second that?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Yes.
Trustee Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now we're going on to 8B, Clear Networks Conduit Lease Agreement.
So I've read through this a couple times, and typically I'll find something that I think that needs to be changed. The one thing that I noticed that they'll pay the full amount, $106,000, I think it was, and then it's a 20-year lease. So, that would be revenue, and of course, then you wouldn't see any lease revenue for the next 19 years after this year. So anyway, and I know that this was sent to Attorney Goldman. I don't think there was anything. The Clear Networks conduit lease.
Yeah, I've had an opportunity to review it, and my suggestion is that there be a motion to give the town manager signature authority on this lease. There were a couple of items that I saw I had questions on that are really non-substantive in nature, just like those cleared up before there is an actual signature and execution on the lease. So that would be my recommendation.
Giving signature authority instead of executing, or in addition?
Yeah, no, a signature authority to the town manager once the little items are, that I question, are clarified.
Got it.
And, but again, they're really not substantive, and the lease looks good otherwise.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a problem with doing that. That way it doesn't have to come to us again with the very minor tweaks that are not substantive, and it then allows you to sign when it's
I
ready.
think this is similar to what we signed with Bonfire and the Tribe.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So it's pretty similar.
So it's a one-time payment of $116,172, and then for 20 years you won't see anything until, so.
Yeah, but if we broke it down by year annually,
It's not
what could you
much.
do with that money, which
Yeah.
116 grand we can do?
Yep.
We could do something with that.
Yep.
Not a lot, but something.
And then they can, in 20 years, they have to lease it, they purchase it back? Sorry, I'm trying to read that part.
So the Clear Networks shall have the option to purchase a leased conduit for $1, subject to all town and state approvals and regulations. DOLA requires that we cannot sell. So we have a DOLA broadband grant on this. It's a $400,000 project. I know it's going to be a lot more than that, but we only can get a grant up to $200,000, and DOLA will not allow us to use that grant money to do a project. Then we turn it over to a private vendor. It has to remain in local government control with those grant funds. That's the reason for the 20 years.
Okay, and then after 20 years, what happens?
And after 20 years, she'll have the option to purchase the lease conduit for $1. But anyway, I won't be here in 20 years, I can tell you that.
I'm
Second.
hoping not. Could be.
You never know.
No, but that's actually a great question
Yeah.
with regards to what is it that they'll have the least, the conduit that they are leasing for the 20-year period. They will own that conduit that they've taken up, not
Not
all
the
the
whole
other
thing.
items that we have in our infrastructure. So to the extent that they've got their infrastructure in the conduit for the 20-year period, that's what they'll own.
Okay.
And then they can fix it.
And then they'll have
Yep.
responsibility.
I like that one. Then they can fix it.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy.
Okay, sorry, I just was seeing
That's the
that. I wanted
important
to make sure I knew what we were giving her permission or not to sign, so thank you.
Any other questions or comments from anybody? All right, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to execute the Clear Networks conduit lease agreement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments?
And
All right.
again, just to clarify, that's giving her signature authority to sign the lease once any changes are made.
Yes, its signature authority is the motion that I made.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Zazzaro?
Yes.
Trustee Harts?
Yes.
Trustee Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Wolf?
Yes.
Trustee Ah?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moreland?
Yes. All right, Board of Trustee reports, upcoming dates of interest. Anybody have reports?
I do. So, from my volunteering to be a part of the La Plata County Healthcare Initiative Coalition, I have been in contact with Greg Phillips and put in my application to be representing the town of Bayfield on that coalition. So I'm really excited to learn more about what they're trying to do and how we can have more access to services and providers, and there's a whole list of things. They've got quite the mission statement. But it's really exciting if there's some change that can be made to give more options and access and understanding to the residents of the town, so.
Trustee Cesaro, if you wouldn't mind extending apologies on my behalf to Greg. He called me about a month ago, and I never returned his call. And I assume that he was wanting to call me to discuss whatever it is he's been discussing with you, and I'm sure you're much more capable of handling it. So
I will let him know that you and I
Thank you.
talked, and
he's a friend of mine.
we're
so,
all good. Yes,
yeah.
he seems to be
All
a
right.
friend of many.
Yeah, good guy.
Yeah. That's my only report to,
Anybody
except I
else?
am really looking forward to actually maybe fulfilling my role as liaison to the emergency operations plan, so you and me, Marshall,
Yeah,
get ready.
yeah,
I'm ready for all incident action plans.
yeah.
Regional Housing Alliance, I attended the meeting. I've actually attended two things they've done. They've been meeting together with local people that have some skin in the game when it comes to housing solutions and talking about Prop 123. They're still trying to figure out what those applications for when those funds become available, what that'll look like. We're still trying to determine whether or not there's going to be a 3% requirement for municipalities to have a 3% growth each year of how much workforce housing they have in their municipality. And they haven't come to decisions on any of that. And then they talked about, there's a fund that the Economic Development Alliance has put together that is basically it's for technical assistance, but it could result in, 300 units out of that? Yeah. No, but it's technical assistance to help them, Catalyst Fund. I couldn't think of the word. So I think that's pretty much it. Any other board reports? Okay, just a reminder, May 29th, Memorial Day is observed. Offices are closed. June 6th, Board of Trustees regular meeting. I have a real quick question. July 4th, are we having a meeting on the Monday before?
The mayor wanted to cancel that. I asked her if she wanted to reschedule, and she wants it all on the 18th.
Okay.
So there'll only be one in July. And, you know, I know this is a gnarly meeting, but I have things that are coming fast and furious, and I don't see these agendas getting smaller. Hopefully, you know, you can all thank Ashley, your mayor, for
Canceling one?
canceling
Giving us one break?
But I don't see them getting smaller.
All right, well, on that note,
Start 'em
we are
earlier?
adjourned.
Great stuff.
Start them at 6.
See you.
Oh, hey, you too.